Okay. Yeah, for some reason it likes to reset the camera and audio when that shit happens, but you're
That
back.
is weird. But can you still hear me?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. It's All Relative Podcast. I'm your host, Samboy, L Samboy, and today we are doing an interview with a friend and common creator and somebody who has allowed me to be interviewed on their platform, and I will allow them to introduce themselves.
Cool. I am Jimmy. I'm a cartoonist. I'm a cartoonist that likes to poke fun at every aspect of life.
Yep, and we follow you on it's Been Better Comic. And
It's all over. I'm a bit. My main website is beenbettercomic.com. You can follow me on Instagram. It's Been Better Comic. I think I've been Better Comic on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm also doing cartoons on Used Media, usemedia.org. So you can find me. I think you can even type in my name, Jimmy Purcell, Purcell, and I think I'm at the top of Google.
Okay,
Though
hell yeah.
someone recently searched for Jimmy Purcell on Instagram, and they're like, "Hey, I'm looking for a family member. Is this you?" And I'm like, "No, sorry."
Is Purcell a common surname?
It's not. I don't think it is. I think that whenever I see another Purcell, there's like this weird kind of like camaraderie of like, yeah, we have the same last name. All right. But I felt for the person because I've also searched for family members who hasn't.
Right.
But when I told them that I'm not that guy, I was like, good luck and
Right.
don't catch COVID.
Hell yeah. Well, yeah, man. Great to have you on. I'm so glad that we're able to do this and whatnot. Always great chatting with people. And just wanted to start off, I guess, with just kind of your own story and just your general backstory, and then also how you became interested in animation and drawing and cartoons.
Well, I don't know. Okay, so when I was really young, I was raised by my not raised by my grandparents, but I spent a lot of time with my nana and papa, my grandparents on my mother's side,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times they would give me the newspaper. They would give me the Sunday funnies, the comics page, the funnies page,
Yeah.
and I would always read them, and I would watch cartoons. I would watch a lot of really the older cartoons. I was raised on older cartoons,
Mm-hmm.
then modern day cartoons, the Disney afternoon block. And I remember being a kid and thinking I wanted to become an animator.
Mm-hmm.
As I got older, I realized no, animation takes way too much time. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of teams. You're drawing movements every second another frame. That's not for me. I started getting into reading the Sun. I was reading the Sunday Funnies, and they had the one panel drawings where they had the
Mm-hmm.
one panel gag, and I'm like, that's it for me. Just
Mm-hmm.
one drawing. I like that. That's the easiest thing there is. It wasn't until junior high that I realized, oh wait, if you add more panels to the gag, you can
Mm-hmm.
set up the punchline. You
Right.
prolong the punchline. You introduce the reader to a world that they don't know shit about,
Mm-hmm.
and the middle one is to get them to the punchline. The middle one you can okay. You know
Mm-hmm.
the sexual term edging?
Oh yeah, of course.
I think of it like edging. I
Yeah.
think of it like the middle frames are just to get you to the climax. It's just there to give you just enough to be like, what the hell are we? What is this? And then the
Yes.
punchline comes and hits you. And so at junior high, not knowing the term edging, but
Right.
knowing that a punchline is funnier when you draw it out.
Yes.
And that got me into doing comic strips. Then in high school, it was in my science class, and I was doing drawings, and my science teacher says, "Hey, Jimmy, you should join the school newspaper." And I was like, "Cool. What? We have a school newspaper? All right,
Yeah.
I'm in. Let's do this." And that started me on the journey of journalism, and I think that
Mm.
really encouraged me to be more investigative, be hungry for knowledge, and
Mm-hmm.
being able to take a topic, study as much as I possibly can, just so I can fine tune the punchline so that it actually is more poignant, much more important to read and to laugh. And a lot of times when you're doing good satire, people really appreciate it because life sucks, and we all have common things that kick us when we're down. So if you can make fun of the things that kick us when we're down, everyone can appreciate that.
Right. Okay, excellent. I was gonna say about the edgy thing. I was gonna be like, if you was discovering that when you was in middle school, I was gonna be like, you was being set up to be very far ahead of the curve in that respect. Be very envious of your peers.
Well, I remember masturbating before I knew that there was even a term for masturbation. When I found out that there was a name, I was like, "Holy shit! All right, cool. There's actually a word for it. All right."
I'm just stroking my little, love stick, stroking my little love stick.
Because we were totally going to talk about sex, you know.
Right? Exactly. But that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I also had an interest in journalism at a certain point in that time period, like from later middle school to like high school and whatnot. I even worked on the that team. I forget exactly what the term was. It wasn't necessarily newspaper. It was something else, but like the circulating of the the books or periodical, whatever the fuck, in the last couple of years of my high school. I was on that shit. And it's interesting that you bring that up, in that you wanted to simply use it to enhance saying the comedy ultimately. Um, so would you say that up to that point, when, getting interested in journalism, and I'm assuming, more socio-political, elements in history and whatnot, that, you just had a very much more straightforward comedic appreciation, like, more slapstick humor, more like, like you said, 2 or 3 panel, type stuff, or stuff that was just, a lot more visceral and not as cerebral?
Um, I think it was. I think it was much more sugar coated. I'm going to call it sugar coated
Mm.
because it's dealing with like really simple stuff like, oh, who burnt the toast,
Mm.
or oh man, it's trash day. It's Garfield is very simple stuff, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
that I'm no Jim Davis, but keeping it very simplistic that every age group, every person can just read it and acknowledge the humor. But I feel like when you can add a little bit of controversy, people they're tantalized. They're excited about laughing at something that they feel like they shouldn't be laughing at.
Hmm.
And you can use that. You can use that incorrectly as well. If you make something that is just for shock value, then it's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck, man? It
Yeah.
gets boring. I think that if you're just going for shock value, you're not going for any kind of if you're not doing it, if you're only doing it for shock value, you're gonna bore them down. People are gonna get desensitized to your joke, and it's just gonna be
Hmm.
pointless.
Yeah.
Um, I
There's a
remember
difference
in high
between
school.
edging and edginess.
Yes. Or edginess, and then the edge lords,
And then
which I feel like edge lords they annoy the hell out of me.
yeah, because they can't turn it off. That's their primary, secondary, and tertiary setting. That's their only fucking mode that they operate in. And it's just
Right?
like, do you not have anything? It's like, do you not have anything else to offer to the conversation? We can all enjoy, what I'm saying, some edgy shit from time to time, but it's like, do you have anything else to offer?
Yeah, it's always like if I feel like edgelords, when you buy a Twinkie, they'll tell you, "Oh man, you're just being a puppet of capitalism." I'm like, "Nope, I just like Twinkies.
Yeah,
This is tasty."
yeah. We can like bullshit. Everything ain't got to be all deep and nutritious, and fuck all that. But you were saying that yeah, it was a progress, it was a process, of being able to integrate all of these different elements into it. And so, were you raised around comedy, or people that were just very critical and sarcastic, or other animators and creative types?
So, my best friend's mom, she would all the time watch. She would always watch the Marx Brothers, or she would watch the Three Stooges. And I feel like while I did not understand what I'm absorbing, I didn't understand the comedy that I'm absorbing. I do think that they did leave a mark on my psyche when I became a writer. Um, One of my favorite examples of being able to absorb something without knowing that you're being introduced to that kind of tone of comedy is on Animaniacs. There's a scene where Dot opens the door and everyone falls out, and she looks at
Mm.
the camera. She breaks the fourth wall. And she says, "Oh, I get it. It's from the Marx Brothers. Oh, hilarious!" And she does it so dry. And as a kid, I did not know the Marx Brothers to be able to recognize that reference,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
did not appreciate dry humor at such a young age. It's only when I started getting older, I started being like, oh, I like the Marx Brothers and the Three Stooges for slapstick comedy, but then when I saw how subversive they are,
Mm.
in their humor. That's what introduced me to Charlie Chaplin. That's what introduced me to just the concepts of comedy does not necessarily just have to be about violence. It can you
You know,
can
that's
make
really
you can
no.
make
Go ahead.
social commentary.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say specifically violence because I thought you were gonna just say slapstick, which doesn't, just involves physical activity of some kind, but it's like really there is just a lot of comedy that is just rooted in allusions to or just acting out violent actions. Saying shit that wouldn't be tolerable under any other social circumstances except in one in which, people are able to laugh at it. Whether the violence is really if it's really soft and performative, or if it's a lot more serious and consequential.
I mean, even being raised on Looney Tunes gets really violent.
Yeah. Oh, oh, dude. Like, and you know what? I don't know if it was like my father or somebody else saying about those cartoons and whatnot. He said he was surprised. Somebody saying that they were surprised that Looney Tunes and stuff became popular with kids because they were actually created for adults. Those cartoons, the older ones, because it was really like a way for it was just supposed to be pure escapism. You know what I'm saying? And shit that clearly, couldn't be because a lot more adults, it would have been a lot more, common knowledge for most adults to recognize, the allusions to like drug and alcohol abuse or the allusions to like suicidal ideations or using violence in such a severe way to resolve conflicts and whatnot. This is stuff that, you know, you ideally usually wouldn't want children to be exposed to, or I'm assuming at least at those times, because like you just think about the uproar over like Cardi B's WAP video, or like the continued controversies over video games. Even though there's violent video games in every country, there's still people who will say that like no, it's what's causing the violence in the country. Get rid of them. You know what I'm saying?
I,
Shit
I
like that.
I don't necessarily think that's true though, because a lot of times those cartoons were the beginning of movies to be
Hmm.
able to keep kids or families. Um, did they bring kids to the movie theaters? Now I think about it, because a lot of times, whenever I hear about the movie theater in the old days, it was
Hmm.
a whole big event where people would dress up and they would go see a movie. So
Hmm.
maybe you're right. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I'd have to look into that.
Yeah.
Um, I just feel like a lot of times the old cartoons, like I think about the grasshopper and the ants, and that's an old Aesop's fable, and they had the grasshopper like sing about oh, the world has lots of living, and he sings about just being lazy and like not doing
Hmm.
anything, and that's
Hmm.
supposed to teach us a lesson, and I don't see adults being able to be like, oh yeah, you're right, grasshopper, like it's
Hmm.
that cartoon, but I think that cartoon was in color. I'd have to look at it. I think it's on Disney Plus, but
Yeah.
um, I would like to find out at what point did it specifically start being aimed at kids? Because I
Yes.
know the old Alice in Wonderland cartoons, those were very childlike. And
Hmm.
was it Looney Tunes that was directed towards adults? Because I feel like Disney might have always aimed towards kids.
Right. So I mean, I think that was kind of the thing, and I'm sure you would know more of the history in bits and
Oh, I
pieces,
don't.
like
Barely, barely.
barely. But that was and not even necessarily the Looney Tunes, but kind of like the more like the earlier, saying iterations of cartoons in general. Because I mean, I don't know exactly how long, you would say like when the first cartoons and animated, reels and stuff were made, but this prioritizing towards children and teenagers was something that is relatively new. That just, was in the 20th century. You know what I'm saying? For the most part, a lot of shit was aimed at adults because it's like, oh, they have the money, they have, seeing the access to shit and everything. So, um, and then later, yeah, it would be good to know exactly when like it became more targeted because you have corporations like you said, like Disney, who became much more explicitly honed into that shit, and then later on, like you had campaigns specifically that were based around selling action figures and then becoming cartoon shows like Transformers, Pokemon was kind of the same thing. It was nobody was really expecting it to become as big and long standing as it did become. Um,
Did you watch
so yeah.
the where the toys that made us?
No, what is that? That a
It's on
documentary?
Netflix. It's on Netflix, and it's a really amazing show. And they explained that I think it was either GI Joe or Transformers, but they were explaining that commercials back then couldn't have like cartoons in them
Mm,
because they were supposed to just sell the toys. And if you make
yes.
cartoons, then you're trying to you're exploiting kids and being
Hmm.
like, oh, now I need to have this because that cartoon.
Hmm.
You're just supposed to sell the toy as a toy is. But
Yes.
then they made a toy and they would make a cartoon around the toy to sell the toy.
Right.
And I feel like it was 80s and 90s that really got the businesses to realize that, oh, we should make the cartoons a marketable business.
Right. Yes. And the thing is, even though I haven't seen that, that same thorough line of thought and how things have changed is something that's been brought up, you know, what I'm saying in different conversations and whatnot. You know that being able to tap into this market and really groom children from when they are literally able to perceive anything to seeing their identity shaped around. You know what I'm saying, these cartoons, these action figures and whatnot. And our generation is really one of the biggest examples of that shit. As more people in our age group get older and have more some of us have more disposable income and whatnot. Yeah, you see like the way people fixate their identities around, what I'm saying, these consumable products and these cartoons and these, nostalgia and shit.
I have quite a few friends that have literal bat caves because of Batman.
Yeah, exactly. They're bringing those fantasies of like as a kid. Because if you would have been watching this stuff when it first came out and you were like 16, 17, and you're about to become adult in the world, you're just kind of like, oh, that'd be really cool or whatever. And it'd be nice to go hang out with the dude, hang out with your friends and saying cosplay or whatever. But now it's like you have that idea in your head from when you're like 4 or 5 years old. So then like by the time you get to be 15, 16, it's already been in your head for like a decade. And then the next following decade after that, it just gets reinforced. Saying as you actually start to gain more money and more serious relationships and obligations in life.
One of my friends, he's actually into animation. He was an animation supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what companies he worked for, but he was telling me that midlife crisis for our generation is going to be very strange because of all the stuff that we're going to buy. We're not going to buy the big cars. We want the nerdy shit that we didn't get to have as kids. And I told him, I still want the Double Dragon Cruiser because I have so many Double Dragon figures. I have the motorcycle. I have a lot of the villains, the good guys, but I never got the car, and I want the car. And I don't even want like a big car. I don't want like an actual car I can drive. I want the Double Dragon Cruiser, and I never got that, so I want it.
Right? Exactly. Or you see people talking about bringing back, excuse me, wasn't there something? I mean, hell, there was a big example of that shit with the Mulan Szechuan sauce through Rick and
Sure.
Morty. A Rick and Morty, a very contemporary, cartoon, extremely popular, but then playing off of this nostalgia from the, I guess, 90s to 2000s, or whenever that movie fucking came out, 98, 99, and tapping into that shit. And it worked to some degree and caused a whole, and caused some very, memeable moments, that are going to live on forever.
Some unexpected reaction to a goddamn McDonald's sauce.
And it was really just kind of like a side bit at the end of the episode, because it was a random tangent when Rick was in a drunken high bender and was just like, yeah, remember the Szechuan sauce from the Mulan premiere in 98, Morty, blah, 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 it was great, it was blah, 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 blah. It was just supposed to be like another just random saying expression of like who Rick is as a character, and it got turned into a huge media campaign and a fucking profit flip for saying the McDonald's and the creators of the show and everything.
Which is strange because one of my favorite things about Rick and Morty is the fact that they do so much work for just 1 second of film. Because when they go to a different planet or they go to a different universe, they have to make the only way it's going to actually be realistic and you're going to be able to appreciate it is if they actually do the work to make a whole civilization for this place that they're at.
Yeah.
Like the whole face hugger civilization, you saw that, right?
Oh yeah, I've seen them all. Oh yeah.
They had to design all of those buildings, and those buildings get just destroyed. You barely get any chance to look at them. And I feel like with the Szechuan sauce thing, the writers were just like, there's probably a writer that was obsessed with the sauce, and they thought it would be funny, so they put it in the episode, and then they have just a really toxic fan base that lost their fucking mind about sauce. And I just remember some people even stayed in line and they were upset. And it was weird because I empathize with them because here's this moment in history that they get to be in line for sauce based on a show that they really love. But then the ones that really got crazy and like really just the guy who jumped on the counter, I saw his thing and I'm like,
oh
dude,
yeah, he was,
calm down, man.
Yeah, it was, and that was that was goofy to me. That was more on like the embarrassing, just like embarrassing himself, side. because yeah, there was definitely the talk of like, very toxic, saying Rick and Morty fans. But to me, like the more times I've actually like encountered them or seen like the toxic side of them is the ones who unironically admire Rick and really try to tap into that, like, oh, being super rational, being very super callous and everything like that. Like, that dude, like, with his shirt over, pickle, I'm Pickle Rick and everything is just more of like, to me, that's just kind of like typical like teenage or young, 20 something fuck, what's the term that everybody uses? Cringiness. To me,
Yeah.
that's more of, cringiness. The toxic motherfuckers are the ones who are like, yeah, Rick and Rick is actually a great guy, and we should all aspire to be Rick, and that's definitely a very real reaction. But going on the same line of thought, then, so in your journey of cartoons and animation and whatnot, and you, saying understanding your connection to it and seeing others, do you and thinking about how people become obsessed around things or the different fandoms and the toxic elements of them, and I'm sure you've been to like different like conferences, conventions, and whatnot. Um, what is your take on what it represents that so many people that this has become so popular that people are so deeply embedded with this? And do you think if it's something that's going to get better, worse, or if it's just an expression of how people really are, and them finally be able to engage in shit they've already wanted to do?
Once we get past gatekeeping, it's
Hmm.
going to get better. Because I feel like gatekeeping is such a really weird thing where people are like, this is my thing. I love this thing. How dare you like it? And if you
Hmm.
want to like it, you have to know everything about it. Then you can like it. Then I'll give you permission to like it. And
Right.
it's like, no, just, everyone starts off as ignorant. Just teach
Hmm.
them about the thing, and then they can be as much of a nerd as you.
Right.
One thing that I will, and the reason why I think it's going to get better is that doing the comic shows, like I do a lot of comic shows, as you mentioned,
Hmm.
and I do a lot of free drawings. And one event I went to was a Star Wars event, and this little girl, she comes up to me and she wants a drawing of a character. She tells me the
Hmm.
character's name, and I'm just like, I I don't know who that is. Can you spell the name? And it was a Star Wars character, a female Star Wars character from a video game that this kid played.
Hmm.
And she was like, and she was telling me, she's like, this is my cosplay. I'm dressed as the character.
Yeah.
And she's like, and I pulled up my phone and I Googled the character to get an idea of drawing it. But I think that that is fantastic because
Hmm.
I feel like the more representation that we put in the content, because like too many times cartoons and comics are directed towards white boys. The protagonist is always just a white cisgender boy. And
Right.
so when I see girls now getting characters that they can latch onto, I'm just like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is amazing. And I look forward to seeing what the future has to hold as more and more representation is included in the pop culture.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think I've only been to one conference, and I think it was actually I went with Matt, and it was like an anime, or not an anime. It was more like Japanese. It was more like
Anime's
Jap
fucking weird.
Janime. I think it was more like, it wasn't an anime one. It was more like a Japanese rock metal scene type thing. I forget
Okay.
exactly what it was. I haven't been to many of those, but from what but going off of the thing about representation and
Yeah.
gatekeeping, because gatekeeping is an issue that's being discussed in every saying domain now, whether it's about race and gender or simply I'm saying the entertainment that people like. And like you said, that certain people feeling as if they have ownership on it, not even because they were part of the process of creating the shit, just because they themselves are just one of the many consumers, and they see themselves as being saying the ultimate representation of what this really commodity was supposed to represent. Saying people, again, let people latch themselves onto this stuff, but without realizing that part of your cultural expressions and your identity and everything and the stuff you care about that was passed down from somebody else, and you synthesized a new something else off of that, and then the next generation is going to do the same thing, and that it's all beneficial for us to have communication with one another and see the ways in which we overlap and compare, and the ways in which we contrast. you know but like you said, so many people get caught in, like, whether it's, there's different ways to put it, whether it's cultish or dogmatic or just, simple, people having their head up their ass, that like, no, you're not acceptable. You don't pass. You haven't passed the criterion, saying for me to give you, saying, to let you go through. And it's like, what the hell have you done? What have you helped contribute to this thing except putting your money into it? Which, that's one part of it. you know what I'm saying, supporting the fucking scene and everything, but like anything else? Do you help foster anybody's talent? Have you given anybody any guidance? Have you produced anything that has been discussed within the subculture itself? It's like, no, you're just a fucking you're a cheerleader. You know what I'm saying? But you're trying to play coach. You're acting like a recruiter though.
So it's funny because I agree with that completely, and I feel like the only community that I see that is the most open for anyone to join is
Hmm.
Ghostbusters. Because
Hmm.
a lot of times, like whenever I'm around like really hardcore Ghostbuster fans, okay, so when the 2016 came out with the all-female team,
Hmm.
most of the hardcore Ghostbuster fans were like, "Yeah, let's do this." They just want a Ghostbuster movie, and
Right.
it's strange because the first movie was art. That was actually writers who had an idea that and they were passionate about this idea and they made the movie. Then the second one was just because, oh shit. Well, they made a cartoon. The cartoon was popular. Then they're
Hmm.
like, all right, let's make another movie. And the
Hmm.
movie is much more it mimics what the cartoon has done because now
Yeah.
Slimer's a good guy. Now Janine has bright red hair, and Slimer's a good guy because now there's an ecto cooler. There's a whole drink. It's become this whole practice in commercialism and capitalism in Ghostbusters. And now the
Um,
second one was forced upon us just because everyone now wants more stuff. And
right.
when the 2016 movie came out, people were like, "Oh, it's not going to be as good as the first two." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about? The second one was silly. The second
Yeah.
one was art. The first one was art. The second one was bullshit." So 2016 is going to be just the same bullshit. However, as a Ghostbuster fan myself, I'm
Mhm.
gonna fucking buy it. I'm gonna enjoy it. I want everyone to appreciate Ghostbusters, and I feel like whenever I see a new fan in Ghostbusters, the
Mhm.
whole Ghostbuster community is like, here, do you want schematics to make your own proton pack? Here's some tips. And
Yeah.
they give photos, they give videos. They want everyone to be involved in perpetrating, and they want this fandom to live on. And the only way you can
Mm.
do that is be helping people fall in love with it. And
Yes. Yeah. No, no, that was I was just saying, yeah, to confirm what you were saying.
oh yeah, and
Yeah.
because like I remember when I went to do a Ghostbuster show, there were kids, there were little girls dressed up in the 2016 uniform with the reflector stripe, and I'm just
Hmm.
like, good. I like seeing new fans in a fandom that I've been with since I was a kid, and
Hmm.
that's why I don't understand gatekeeping. Just because I'm like, do you want your fandom to live? Because
Hmm.
my knowledge of linear time means you have to get new fans.
Yeah. No, no, exactly. And yeah, I think that's the thing is that, again, that, people try to make it seem like it's a new phenomena that people attach their identities to, saying whether it's a commodity or certain figures and everything like that. That's what human beings have always done. Saying whether if it's somebody representing a more ideal version of what they aspire to be, or if they just think something is really aesthetically interesting, saying, and everything in between or outside of that. Do you think so then in that discussion of constantly needing to find ways to incorporate, saying different for people to find themselves represented in these different communities and whatnot, do you feel it is a necessary compromise to do you think it's necessary to compromise the artistic elements, or do you feel that it is possible to say have had that second Ghostbusters film, but it to lean closer to the ideals of the first one and being much more about an artistic expression and a much more unique contribution to the lore and to the subculture, or do you think that that's just a capitulation that they make simply based off of finances?
I think that they could have done it if Sony had the guts.
Mm.
Because the Ghostbusters video game was a fantastic third story, and that was a third story arc. Because they went back to the architect being Ivo Shandor in the video game, and they brought it back, and it was just a really good three-part story.
Hmm.
So I always say that if you want a trilogy, the third Ghostbusters story was in the video game, and you can check that out on YouTube. You can see the cinematic scenes, and you can get
Hmm.
the full story.
Hmm.
Um, the guys who did the comic book by IDW, they were able to join the 80s Ghostbuster team and the 2016 Ghostbuster team and mold the two concepts. And the writer, not Dan Schoen, Dan Schoen's the artist, Eric Burnham, he was able to justify, like, there were complaints I had with the 2016 movie, but
Mm-hmm.
Eric Burnham, through creative writing, was able to justify it and make it make sense. And I'm like, all you have to do is have the guts and invest in good writers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's all that needs to happen. Like with Marvel, I always tell people that we're never gonna get anything like the MCU ever again because the studio has to have the guts to
Mm-hmm.
invest in a concept that is just fucking weird, and the prospect of failure is so high.
Right, right. Because even though I'm somebody that never really kept up with this stuff, I had a peripheral, understanding of these different comic book figures and all these different things. And now it's like, they're bringing all these. I don't know exactly the way you want the term. I don't know if it's like second tier or third tier characters or people that were deeper within the lore and bringing them to the forefront, and some of them becoming surprise hits. Like that whole what was that one where it had like the raccoon and the
Guardians of the Galaxy. I had no fucking
yeah.
clue who they were.
Yeah, and now it's like and now it's like, however many years later, there's something that you expect to see. You know what I'm saying? You expect to see them around.
Well,
Which is
they have the Eternals coming out, and I don't know shit about the Eternals, and I don't really want to. I want to be able to have that kind of experience of like being introduced to characters I don't know.
right, right, right. Yeah, no, and that's awesome. And so, and another thing to go in, like you said about the guts and whatnot, and talking about like Sony and everything, and um, is, they are a multinational corporation. They have legal obligations to hit certain profit margins. Otherwise, tons of people can lose their jobs and lose their pensions and all that other shit, right? And one of the things that has happened, one of the trends that we've seen in the last decade, is other countries outside the U.S. Becoming more industrialized and increasing their consumer domestic, saying basis of productivity and everything, especially China. And that China's influence now in the film industry has become something that is very widely recognized and has had palpable influences on, saying film and also just media representation in the media across the world. Where do you see, or what is your take on the observation of that and the way in which it has affected, saying our media, especially film and comic books and whatnot, and animation?
I am looking very forward to it. I feel like the more any country gets more involved in media, the more Earth becomes globalized.
Mm-hmm.
And I know like the edgelords love to complain about globalism, but I'm all for it. I'm all for just uniting the planet
Mm-hmm.
under the idea of like all of us just want to exist and should be allowed to exist. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
China, the reason why it's able to be as controlling and as just a terrifying government,
Yeah.
is because of the level of secrecy that it holds, that it's able to hold,
Yeah.
and because they have the money, they are able to keep their secrecy. But the more and more they try to get into media, you're gonna lose that. You're gonna lose that level of secrecy if you're out in the open.
Right. Yeah, and that's the frustrating thing. And I keep up with the issue, from different angles and keeping up stuff like what, with Hong Kong and different stuff that's happening with different journalists and news organizations. Um, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, America, the United States, and Western Europe to a certain degree were the bullies on the block. They were the big, same boys in town. And, while there were different smaller spheres of influence, overall, they were the global powers. You know what I'm saying? And then for a minute, you had the USSR, um, and the U.S. and Western Europe after the Nazis fell, not being sure if capitalism or communism was going to become the predominant ideology. Capitalism ended up winning, and what we've seen is that other countries that have taken the cue, that like, okay, hey, capitalism has won for the most part, and let's see if we can beat these motherfuckers at their own game. And China, in addition to other countries, has found a way to beat, saying these other countries who were the bullies on the block, beat them at their own game. And and part of it has been, being able to, like you said, keep that secrecy and being able to, saying use the same bullying tactics when somebody brings up their name. You know what I'm saying? I was just listening to
For
somebody
now.
else for now. But ultimately, yeah, I agree that ultimately globalization is a good thing. Um, People interacting, interfacing, and seeing how other people are living and everything. The more that we normalize different points of view and different life experiences and everything, the better that we're able to get to the conclusion that, that we have a lot more similarities and that we also have a lot of shared enemies, namely mainly our governments and the intelligence agencies and militaries that keep them in power and whatnot.
there's a show on YouTube called Monstrum,
Mm-hmm.
and on it they talk about monsters of many different cultures
Mm-hmm.
over time, and the person who studies it, I'm trying to remember her name. I think it's Varka, Doctor Varka, I think her name is. Either way, um, she's very thorough, and she explains the origin of the monsters, and she also talks about the monsters in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
What movies have been made of the monsters? And one thing I really thought was interesting is that there I can't remember what country it was, but they have a certain monster, and then the government decided, oh wait, those kinds of movies are not allowed because they're spooky or because they're dealing with death, they're dealing with religious stuff that we don't want to talk about. So now those movies are outlawed, and you can't get
Mm-hmm.
any copy of the movies because they destroyed it. And I
Yeah.
feel like if you get rid of people, if you get rid of art, if you stop someone from expressing themselves artistically,
Mm-hmm.
it takes away their strength. It takes away their passion. It takes away their ability to stand up for themselves. So
Yes.
if you give people the opportunity to make movies, if you get people the opportunity to make comics,
Mm-hmm.
it now empowers them. Now now they have a voice to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
I mock the My Pillow guy and the older conservative guys complain about not being able to tweet because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't care about tweeting. Why do you care about tweeting?
Mm-hmm.
This is ridiculous. And I always feel like if I ever was silenced on Twitter or Facebook or any social media thing, it's like
Mm-hmm.
I could still print comics. I could still get my voice out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's I don't need social media to be able to get my voice heard.
Right, but at the same time, though, it's like the difference between we interviewing each other on each other's platforms versus if we were to say get an opportunity to speak on a major news outlet or even just a large independent news outlet, saying or just one of these bigger, saying creators and whatnot. So there's different levels. So while ultimately, yeah, it's like, oh, you're not able to get your message out in the way that you want, it's like at the same time, and this is actually another good segue to go on, is how these different corporations consolidate, and in this case, social media consolidate the public sphere of influence in public communications. Because it's like, yeah, while we all technically have our own, saying space, our own podcast, our own, saying comic strips, our own blah, 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 they still have to be to gain any traction, to gain a real audience, they have to be put in places that have a saturation of people who will consume the shit. And so, we've seen at least on YouTube, there's been the adpocalypses. There's been, saying obviously in the last 4 years since Trump and everything, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they're starting to take more seriously some of the imagery and some of the ideas that are being spread and whatnot. What is your take or what is your perspective on, how things are going forward and how it's affecting, people either based on cultural leanings, preferences, or political preferences, or just how quote unquote edgy and extreme or antagonistic they may be in their creative pursuits.
I feel like they're just corporations. They're just trying to make a buck. And a lot of times, whenever a corporate, it's going back to Sony. I'm going to go back to Sony because I
Yeah.
feel like you start off with a Ghostbusters one, you get a Ghostbusters two, you get a 2016, and you lose a lot of the controversy. And the first one had Dan Aykroyd getting a blowjob by a ghost. What the fuck? Um, and I feel like they are big right now. They
Hmm.
are big right now, and they are very marketable, and they're sugarcoating it for kids because now kids are on it. Because sure, whatever.
Hmm.
But I used to be big on Snapchat. I used to go on Snapchat all the time, but I stopped doing that because it started getting boring.
Hmm.
I still have a Tumblr. Tumblr decided to make it G-rated where they don't get sexual content,
Yes.
but now it's
Yeah.
back. I've seen some sexy shit on Tumblr,
Oh yeah.
and
Okay.
yeah, and I feel like technology is always evolving, and a lot of younger folks I know, and so at comic book conventions, I tell them, "Hey, you can follow me on Facebook," and they're like, "I'm not on Facebook." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Of course you're not. Of course you're not." There's always going to be a new thing. We just gotta go through this moment of Facebook and YouTube holding on to us with their dear lives, and then
Yeah.
there'll be a new thing eventually, as long as the only really worry, the only thing I'm ever worried about is with these big companies is that they've got a lot of money. They can buy shit out.
Right.
So while I don't, okay, whenever I go to a comic book convention, I will always go to Artist Alley. And if I'm gonna buy something, it's usually gonna be from Artist Alley and not like the big guys, not the
Hmm.
big companies, because they already have enough marketing. They already have enough money. I don't have to help them
Yeah.
at all. I am
Hmm.
nothing to them.
Yeah.
However, the people at the indie artists, the Artist Alley, I mean everything to them. If I buy one of their books, if when people buy my book, I'm like, what else do you want? Do you want this drawing? Do you want the sticker? I got more stuff. I want to give it to you. Someone found me at a convention. I was just walking around. They're like, Jimmy Purcell have been better. I'm like, yes. Do you want a free
Ah.
drawing? I can give you a free drawing. You found me. You are a fan. Let's drawing. What do you want? And I
Right.
love it's passion. And the only reason why I bring that up is because I feel like life will find a way. I fantasize about being always underground. I like the underground movement. I like the underground artists creating shit
Hmm.
and put it on there. I mean, we all know about Netflix, but do you know about the app Shutter?
The app
The
Shutter.
apps. Yeah,
Wait,
Shutter.
it's a camera. It's like a picture based app, kind of like
No, Shutter.
Pinterest.
Shutter is all about like Shutter, like shuddering, like scared. It's all about
Oh.
horror movies, and a lot
Oh.
of times they put like the really gritty amateur horror movies that I love on that app, that
Mm.
streaming service. And I feel like while they won't have the same kind of marketing pull as Facebook and Instagram right now, they are
Hmm.
still there, and all we have to do is find them and advertise for them.
Yeah. What is your take on? Did you ever come to Bridgetown DIY in La Puente when I would host shows there or do shows there? Do you
No,
remember that? So there was a spot in La Puente, and it was like a
was it
little
during the
off.
weekdays?
Uh, I think I usually try to do the shows on weekends, and every once in a while I hosted my podcast there on a weekday. But
Damn it. That sounds
but it
like
was
fun.
the spot. It looks like it's gonna close. But it's over in La Puente, and it was like it was basically founded as like an anarchist space. So a lot of the musical acts that come through would be like in that kind of anarcho punk whatnot. And you know, I was only around there, and Matt introduced me to it, and I was only around there like the last year and a half. And my band T-Gon, we would do shows there. I would host shows there and do other stuff, right? And one of the things that I noticed that was really frustrating, and it's something else I want to ask you about, is noticing a lack of a lot of people who had ideas and fantasies about like, oh, we want it to be this big and we want this, we want that, and want that. But then at the same time, when it comes to organizing, saying, okay, let's do this to help raise money. Let's do this to help, you know what I'm saying, get the word out and blah, 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 blah. And there was resistance to that because they felt as if it went against I don't know if it was anarchy or just being independent or just being free or whatever, that it kind of went against the ethos to do stuff like pre-sale tickets or to, saying like hire security or something or, saying, or work with food vendors or just, do this other shit that was being more proactive. And it's something that gets really frustrating when you talk to people, especially in creative spaces, because I'm also a musician and shit. And just noticing that, like, a lot of people have these dreams, these fantasies, and talking about the ways in which the industry is fucked up and everything. And it's like, yeah, that stuff is true. But at the same time, you're not even putting in the effort, looking at these people, it's like, you're not also not putting in the effort to get you through the door to be fucked over. So it's like, what are you even complaining about? It's like it's like you're just spectating, you know what I'm saying? But you're trying to say that all the players in the game, all the people trying to make moves and do something, are the real clowns and shit. So what is your take when, in recognizing the work ethic and people's expectations, creatives' expectations? Um, Let me word that better. What is your perception of the people that you're around and whatnot, and their desires or what they want to happen versus the effort that they're actually putting in?
That is hard to say because I'm around a lot of people that I'm around a lot. I talk with a lot of people that are hard workers that will make the product because they realize that if they don't make the product, they're not going to make anything. They're not going to make any money. And unfortunately, we need money to live. And if you're just going to complain about the people that are making the thing, then
Mm,
how are you going to get paid? How are you going to survive? Um, One of my favorite things is I was in a panel at Amazing Las Vegas, and the panel's name was what was it? Surviving in Indie Comics.
mm,
And someone asked there, they're like, "Isn't this panel called Thriving in Indie Comics?" He's like, "Nuh-uh, it's called Surviving Indie Comics.
mm.
Thriving, thriving is a lot of luck. You get lucky. You work hard, but there's no guarantee that you're going to thrive. All you do is survive, and the only way you're going to survive is if you put the effort to get yourself out there to get known. If you don't want to be known, good on you, but don't think that you're just going to become big on on your own. It takes a lot of work and a lot of luck."
Yeah, a lot of work, a lot of luck, and then that's exactly it. And I think a lot of people disregard um, just how much effort it really takes, to put into that shit. Because I was just reflecting back on when we were the most active, and I was playing in two different bands, right, and working both of my jobs, and then still, doing this starting the podcast and doing other shit, and just being like. Like I'm glad that I'm being productive and doing this shit, but I'm just like, oh fuck, this is what it is to work, 15-hour days, not because I have to, not because I'm actually being like compulsed to, because I realize that this is what it takes to actually get this shit done. And you don't know what thing is gonna pop off for you. But you kind of have to be playing all hands at the same time, with at the same time not completely exhausting yourself, because then you won't be able to push in any direction,
Good luck with not exhausting yourself. I see like during the pandemic, I see a lot of creatives talk about how we are all just exhausted right now. Because I know a lot of creatives that do have part-time jobs or full-time jobs, and they still need to support themselves and oftentimes family.
Mm-hmm.
But dealing with the pandemic, suddenly everything takes so much more work. It's so exhausting, and all the anxiety that we have to deal with is just draining to the point where it's
Mm-hmm.
really difficult to create any content. And I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of memes that said, "Don't be so hard on yourself if you don't create something. You gotta rest because it's a we're in a shitstorm right now. So don't worry
Yeah.
so much about not being able to create. Be
Mm-hmm.
be kinder to yourself."
Yeah, that's definitely been something I've gone back and forth on, because initially it was like, initially, like a lot of people, I was hoping that this would be that we would have our shit together and it'd be over in a couple months or whatever, definitely before the spring and the summer, right? Um, and kind of keeping myself in that mode, like, okay, keep firing on all cylinders, keep your shit going at while you're chilling and everything, because once things open back up, you're gonna want to saying jump back in the mix. But it's like as it continued to go on and on and on, it's like, yeah, I could sit up and practice and work on my shit and everything, but it's like I'm not going to be able to go out and show the song, to perform the song for anybody. Yeah, I can upload it and everything and hope that it catches on, but 99.9% of the time it ain't. So it just really kills the motivation, because like the main way in which we connect with a lot of this stuff is, quite frankly, the same way people make impulse buys in the grocery line and shit. It's like before people become really super passionate and dedicated to whatever it is that you do, they kind of just like, oh, that looks interesting, or that sounds cool, and the shit can be in one ear and out the other, which is why you do stuff like, oh, you fuck with us, here, let me give you a free record, a free CD, let me give you a free drawing, let me do this, so that way you have something else a little more tangible to stick in. So that way, after that impulse, saying, kind of goes away, you still have like, oh shit, they gave me a free shirt or they gave me whatever. I'm gonna go and continue to check them out and maybe become a more dedicated fan and whatnot. And yeah, man, just all the stories of hearing like artists or bands or creatives that had to languish for like a decade before you knew who they were, or 20 years before you knew who they were, or even dying and you not knowing who they were till after that, and they just died broke and miserable. And it's just like, oh my God, why couldn't I just have the mind that doesn't, that just wanted to get into finance, or just wanted to get into something that was a lot more consistent.
My at a comic book convention, my friend said, if I had the Infinity Gauntlet, I would snap and give everyone common sense. I was like, don't do that. He's like, why?
No.
It's like there would not be a comic book convention if you gave everyone common sense.
Yes, yes. And that's another thing is, and even though this is something that gets really turned up a lot in, US culture, is it's just something that's also human. It's the escapism, it's the indulgence, it's the entertainment. It's the cult of celebrity. We love that shit. If more people had stable lives, if more people had more stable lives, they a lot of this shit wouldn't exist. A lot of fast food industry and stuff wouldn't be as big because that's a major indulgence for people. A lot of the entertainment industry wouldn't exist. A lot of stuff like makeup wouldn't exist because people wouldn't be as self-conscious about their image. It wouldn't be judged as much. A whole bunch of, saying shit that you realize, oh fuck, it plays off of this thing is playing off of this other element of desire that's in a person because they feel as if they're lacking it due to this other thing that they're lacking in their life. And it's just all these fucked up impulses and fucked up things that are reinforcing one another. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's more deliberate, and sometimes it's just the natural consequence of shit that just happens, you know?
I'm glad you said the natural consequence of shit happening because I was going to say, well, storytellers have always been a key point in every culture throughout time.
Yes.
And when you said natural, I'm like, okay, good, nature, because
Right.
originally it was just because the seasons were changing and we were scared shitless because there's a good chance we're going to die because winter's upon us. And so
Right.
you tell a story, you explain why winter happens, you explain it with spirits, you explain it with gods, with folklore, anything to get people's minds off of, fuck, it's going to get real cold.
Yeah. And also showing them to, that example you made of I think it was a different example, but the old parable of I think it's the grasshopper and the ants or something like
Yeah.
that, where basically the grasshopper was just kind of dicking around, what I'm saying, getting his dick sucked or whatever by some ladybugs or whatever, while the ants were actually grinding and everything like they do. And so by the time the winter did come around, saying they was straight, and the grasshopper was like, "Yo, can you come fix me a plate and everything?" And they was like, "Nah, fuck off, B." Those parables and everything that kind of that gave an example, like you said, of, hey, we know bad times are coming, so let's spend this time that we have getting our shit together, so that way when it does come around, we'll be straight and we can focus on other things. So now human beings, we're a lot more complicated, we're a lot more capable of certain things than like ants and insects and whatnot, but the same concept applies. Let's use this downtime, so using those fables, using that mythology, using those, saying, even just looking at how animals behave and being like, hey, if the animals can do this shit and they've been around, saying, why don't we, saying, incorporate some of that?
So last year during spring, when all of a sudden soap and toilet paper was out, uh, I was very stressed out because I couldn't find any toilet paper or soap. And then I knew that human beings have short-term memories.
Yes.
And so, and I knew that I kept on hearing the doctors explain that once the temperatures drop, we're going to get hit really hard with some high numbers of COVID. And
Mm.
so when we got into summer and I knew people would start forgetting about needing toilet paper and soap, I was like, all right, well then I'm going to buy plenty of toilet paper and soap while everyone else forgot about it. And I went through winter not worrying about toilet paper or soap. I
Yeah.
still have another container of I got the big containers of soap and I'm pretty good. And I
Yeah.
blame it on that damn ant story because I brought it up because I think about it often. Um,
It's great
and
though, isn't it? That something like that's been around for so long still sticks because of how like pertinent it still is. It was immortalized in the movie A Bug's Life.
yeah, and I feel like it's the same thing with we know that this summer because last year the fire season was horrible, and
Yeah.
with climate change it's only going to keep getting worse,
Hmm.
and we know it's coming. Will we do anything to help it? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's the scary thing, right? Because it's funny that you said that. I started laughing immediately when you said when toilet paper and soap was in short supply because I forget. You talk about short-term memories. I forgot about that shit, and one of the reasons I forgot about it is because I'm already because even though I stay with a couple of family members, I still like I buy my own food, I buy like my own laundry detergent, I buy like so I already so like I usually already buy like a bunch of toilet paper and tissues and shit. So like when I had stuff and it was depleting, I was like, I still don't have to go out for 6 months. So like I barely ran out of the toilet paper and tissues that I had like in January and shit.
Nice.
Just because of how I naturally roll. But but then so you talking about like the bigger stuff like climate change and shit like that's only going to get worse, and people are going to be traveling or not traveling, people are going to have to migrate from where they live because it's going to be less um hospitable to human life and whatnot, right? And um and and again about this stuff about different parts of the economy or different people that are incentivized by keeping things the way that they are. Part of the reason why we had the fires and why like Texas and other states have been going through this shit with the recent flash cold storm that they had is there were different groups that are incentivized on keeping shit fucked up like that. And they have a lot of power. They got the politicians in their pockets. They have influence within law enforcement, the intelligence agencies and shit. Hell, Jeff Bezos, in addition to running Amazon, the biggest company in the world, and having owning the Washington Post, one of the largest and longstanding newspapers in the world, he also has been gaining ties with the CIA, and he hasn't been shy about it. You know what I'm saying?
Why should he?
Why should he be? Who's gonna stop him? But it's like, it's no, yeah, it's terrifying because there are people who are directly incentivized by keeping these same structures, and it's like, yeah, I'm glad that people are finally starting to realize, come to grips with just how deep-seated the rot is. But it's like, I also deeply question, like, okay, are people going to actually, and regular citizens and just regular people, are we actually going to mobilize and push back enough to show them, hey, you need to really, change some shit. BLM has been one of the most impactful movements, the last couple of decades. And, it's gotten some marginal things done, but it's like, it's still very been, it's still hard to penetrate that shit because some of the stuff that is being addressed is literally centuries old. You're trying to get people to let go of shit that in their minds has worked for several centuries, and introducing something new at a moment in time when people are less open to trying new things, because shit's already so fucked up.
I always, when I tell people about white privilege, when I found out what white privilege was,
right.
I always, a lot of times when I draw a cartoon about white privilege, someone's like, oh, it's just because you have white guilt. And it's like, it doesn't feel like guilt. It feels like anger. Because who created Batman?
No idea.
No idea? Okay, that's fine. That's even better. That's so much better. Okay. When I was younger, I found out that Bob Kane created Batman. And then just recently, in the recent years, I think in my 20s, I found out that no, Bob Kane just took credit for creating Batman, that most of the creation was Bill Finger. There's even a documentary on Hulu called Batman and Bill, and it's all about one guy's devotion to getting Bill Finger the credit that he deserves. And the first time that they mentioned Bill Finger creating Batman is on Batman v Superman, and that's a recent fucking movie.
Wow. And so, Batman's almost, what, a century old by now? Or
It's
younger, or maybe like the 40s, 50s?
Yeah. And
Damn.
Bill Finger never got the credit that he deserved. Like, and all he really wanted was, hey, can you put my name on it? And it's like, Bob Kane's like, oh, but that would destroy the narrative of Batman created by Bob Kane. And I remember when I found out about Bill Finger, I was pissed off. I was angry that I perpetrated this fucking lie. And I feel like that's the same way with white privilege, where once I found out, when I found out that the medical community thinks that black people are tougher, that they can handle more pain, yeah. I was just like, what the fuck is this shit? What the hell? And why would I know that? Because I barely want to talk about I don't want to talk to anyone about the doctor, because I hate the doctor's office. I hate going to the hospital. Right. So why would I know that? It's a privilege.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's not even strictly, white privilege is one element of that, but there's also, but then there's also just the privilege of racism is not or all kinds of identity and everything is not just one flat, kind of experience. One person, even if they're aware of white privilege, is not going to get the same, somebody living in like LA or whatever, in Hollywood or whatever, is not going to experience the same kind of white privilege that's experienced by somebody in the middle of Arkansas. You know what I'm saying? At the same time, a black person isn't going to have the same discrimination pinned towards them in Arkansas that they would have in LA. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be, different. And so the stuff like, because it was also a learning lesson for me at a certain point to discover that, like, in the medical field that they've done experiments and stuff like this, and that they've like the Tuskegee experiment and or just experiments on prisoners and mentally ill people. Or just the things around like, LGBT people, that's a mental disorder and everything. Women are just the fairer sex, all of these different, things that are just kind of accepted as a matter of fact, because we don't hear any contrary opinions. And then once you hear a contrary opinion, you're like, like you said, I feel like shit for perpetuating and kind of going along with this shit and defending it wholeheartedly. Come to realize by no fault of my own, I was supporting some bullshit, you
Yeah,
know.
it's not guilt. It doesn't feel like guilt. It just feels like anger because I didn't do anything. I didn't
Hmm.
do anything to create it, but I didn't do anything to stop it.
Yeah,
So now I'm just angry and I'm like, okay, well now that I'm involved, let's do this.
right.
I often, even though I can't mention the list. I don't remember
Mm.
the list, but I do often think about the eight that can't wait that BLM started.
Mm,
You
mm,
remember that
mm.
one? And
I
I
think they, I know like 8 demands and whatnot, which
yeah,
I think they got from Hong Kong struggle, which I think was like 10, was it 10 demands or something? But I think it was inspired from partly from Hong Kong what they were doing because they had like
cool.
a thing like eight some demands and no less. But go on.
And I remember reading them, and I can't tell you them. I can whenever you have a list, I'm like, fuck.
Hey, bro, but yeah.
Also, I was just gonna say I will support the list. I like the list. I remember reading it and be like, yeah, that sounds good. But then when you're like, oh, can you repeat it, dude?
And that's all good because I don't fucking know the list. I don't think I've ever
uh,
I may have seen it and shared it, but I was like,
sure.
I didn't like memorize it. But that's the beautiful thing again, and like we touched about this, on when you interviewed me, right? Was you said that like, okay, how do you want non-black people, especially white people, to talk about engage with blackness? I said what I want is them to become just as literate in their understanding as I am. Because if I'm not around, I want you to be able to essentially defend it in the way that I would. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of frustrating because there are some people who are considered leftist or progressive or woke, whom have they're the gatekeepers of the left essentially because they put up very strict parameters on who can talk about what on oh, this is your identity, so you're not allowed to speak on this and everything. And it's like, don't you realize this is actually hurting the movement? Don't you realize this is actually hurting the cause? Because the more that you put up these barriers to entry and shit and say that like, no, you have to wait in here until saying I can get this person with the right identity markers to come in and address this situation and shit. That's not how that's not really helping it. Saying it just creates another hurdle in which people see like, oh, I don't belong in this space, or I have to go through somebody else to be able to express myself. And if we don't like that shit, how are we going to ask somebody else to go along with it? So it's like, there's certain things that I like in the way that the discussions is being made, and then there's a lot of shit that I don't like. Like there was a viral video of some BLM protesters of different backgrounds. They were harassing people that were eating dinner on the street, lunch in the street, and they were talking to a woman, and they were all in her face, and they were like, "I was just at a BLM protest. I support BLM." It's like, this is bad marketing, and you're also souring the taste of somebody whom is less initiated to this stuff. Like, imagine if that was the first time. Like, imagine if this is the first time that somebody is caring about socio-political issues, right? And then this is one of the first things that they see. It's like, it would make me, even if you were to be like, okay, I can support some of the shit they're saying, but I don't want to be around them. You know what I'm saying? You want people to gravitate towards you and be like, oh, give me your input, give me your insights and whatnot. And it's like, just some of the behavior and shit. I feel like it's hurting. It's hurting for the sake of giving some people a chance to, express their very short-sighted and misguided points of view.
I remember on Twitter because someone knows how liberal I am and how much I support BLM. And someone on Twitter sent me that video of the person being harassed at the restaurant, and they're like, "Well, what do you have to say to this?" I'm like, "Those the people that are harassing the restaurant goers, they're fucking idiots. I fucking
Yeah,
hate them." But
yeah,
and
simple as that.
I understand that. Like if someone tried to harass me at the meal, even if I don't, okay, if someone had a T-shirt of a movie and they were harassing me at my restaurant, and while I'm eating, I'm like, now I'm not going to see that movie because fuck that movie, fuck that fan, fuck everything about them, and I understand that. And I told the person that, yeah, I get that. That sucks. That's bullshit. I hate everyone around that. However, every group has their dummies.
Yeah,
So I also understand that there's gonna be dummies. We just have
yeah.
to do our part to try to educate the dummies and to be like, say, don't harass people while they're eating. That's
Yeah,
that's
you're
a
hurting the
that's a
cause.
religious that's a religious ceremony. They pay for that food. They want that food. Don't get in the way of their food.
Jesus, you say religious ceremony, and it's just like a lot of this stuff is very reminiscent of, to kind of go back to China a little bit, when Mao was in power and whatnot. The whole not cancel culture because that's our shit. That's what we turned it. But the shit, what was that shit? Struggle sessions. The struggle sessions where they were literally, I'm not sure how familiar you are with that, but it was
I am
basically
not. I'm
it
looking
was
forward to this.
it was basically like the cancel culture of its time in communist China when they were like, if somebody doesn't speak the prescribed dogma of communism, the prescribed doctrine and everything, then we put a sign around their neck, we put them up on a fucking stage, we humiliate them, we talk down to them and shit, and we basically humiliate them and harass people until they say exactly what we want them to say.
I would say that that would be. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be able to survive that. I'd say that I would. I want to say that I would just because I just imagine myself with the sign, holding the sign and doing like a dance with the sign and
Mm-hmm.
making it seem like I'm okay with the embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just don't know.
But see, you
But
got to
that's
think
also
about the.
because I.
No,
I was
no,
gonna
go
say
ahead,
that's
go ahead.
because I was raised in this society where I can be dumb like that and be fine with that. I think that if I was raised in a different society, that would be not the same thing.
Right, because in that time you're being confronted with, you had the two major factions were like the nationalists and whatnot, right? And our idea of nationalists, saying today is usually very negative and whatnot. But at that time, it's like Mao and the communists and everything. They were literally like destroying museums. They were destroying literature. They were destroying all the remnants of China and everything, and saying that anybody who cares about this old shit and everything, get rid of them. Saying basically saying that like, oh, this is year zero. Saying the year of Mao and whatnot, and going forward. And the thing is, the stain of that still lives on in China, saying where you have to go to places like Taiwan or outside of China to gain a level of understanding about certain elements of Chinese culture because it's been completely fucking erased, and the thing is that I feel like a lot of people, especially when I hear people that talk about how great communism is, or they talk about how so much better other countries outside the U.S. are. It's like, yeah, let's be critical of our country and our culture and our society and everything, but also recognize the things that are being done right. Saying the United States and Europe and everything, and similar other westernized countries have made, yeah, while white supremacy has been very, dominant and everything, there's also always been, saying a strong faction of people, including white people, that fought against slavery, who fought against segregation, who fought against Jim Crow, who fought for more, integrating all peoples and everything, even when it wasn't directly benefiting them. You know what I'm saying? Which is something that continues to this day. And so when people get so caught up in just being anti this, being contrary and playing devil's advocate and whatnot, it's like, yo, y'all need to really go and look through the details of how shit played out for other people and why folks have such a visceral reaction when you bring up stuff like Viva la Resistance, communism, and Stalin was right, and Mao, saying blah 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 blah. And it's like, yo, it's like y'all, not everybody benefited from that shit. As a matter of fact, most people didn't, but they don't want to really grapple with that. They want to stick to this narrative of like, we have something that's just anti what we're used to, and so let's just oppose this thing that we have just so we can be contrarian. It's like y'all don't always know what the consequences of that shit is going to be, because to every movement that's trying to change shit or push things in a certain direction, there's always going to be the resistance movement. There's always going to be the backlash and shit, right? While left wing shit has definitely been on the rise, a lot of progressive, saying shit like that. What's also been on the rise is a lot of right wing reactionary shit. Conservatism is also making a comeback. Fascism is making a strong comeback. You know what I'm saying? You even have like the FBI and the DHS and the CIA saying that, like, in law enforcement agencies saying, yeah, we have deep seated problems with white supremacy in our ranks. You know what I'm saying? Everywhere. And so I guess like I actually ask you another question is, so obviously in the time that I've known you, the time we've known each other, being very politically upfront about our views and whatnot, both leaning to certain degrees on the left wing side. Um, has there been a lot of have you seen a lot of change in your immediate relationships based on these last several years, whether it's just from regular conversations, interactions you've had, or from you expressing your opinions through your art?
I feel like my friends group keeps getting more and more diverse, and it's fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I see friends who are much more comfortable being themselves. Um, the number of friends who are of my friends who are in the transgender community, that number just shot up, and I
Mm-hmm.
just love it. I love people being able to be who they are. I've had two friends come out to me
Mm.
One friend was in high school, the other friend was later, and I always I always feel like I have to apologize to them because I don't like. I've always been very anticlimactic. I've
Mm.
when they come out to me, I'm like cool, and I'm just
Yeah.
like let's talk about Batman again, and I'm just like I don't care. And it's not that I don't care. I love them.
Right.
I love who they are, but their sexual orientation, their sexual identity, it doesn't matter to me. They are who they are, and I like it that people feel comfortable about being who they are.
Right.
And or like last year, the first and last convention I got last year was
Mhm.
San Diego Comic Fest. And San Diego Comic Fest is one of my favorite shows because I always come back with a new friend. Every
Okay.
year is a new friend. It's nuts. I don't know any other show that I make a new friend every year. And and there was this one time where I was at Comic Fest and we were all at the table in the bar and I was looking around and there was so much cultural diversity at that one table.
Mhm.
And it's fantastic. And I feel like I feel like I feel like whenever I hear about so much drama when it comes into leftists or people, for example, when you were talking about all of the communist figureheads, the historical figures, and they start
Mm.
worshiping them, I'm just
Mhm.
like, don't worship anyone. Don't worship don't worship a celebrity. When I talk about Walt Disney and I say that Walt Disney, I love the Disney company, I love their movies, but there's a shit ton of racism, and there was a point where where the animators went on strike because Walt Disney is
Mhm.
a not a good employer, and there's a
Yeah.
strike where Walt Disney said like, why are you guys complaining? I gave you a good office, and it's like, man, the creator of Goofy led that strike.
The creator of Goofy. Was this
Yeah,
the
I
one
forget his name
where
because I'm bad with names.
was this the one where because I've seen like a picture of at least one strike and it was like a black and white photo, but it was a bunch of like I guess like Disney animators or Disney staff, and there was a guillotine that was
I think
out
so. I think that's the
that was
one.
out in there. I was like, holy shit. I was like I don't know if it was like I don't know if it was one that could actually be, be used for that intent, but it was at least like it was the signal. It was the message, right? That like, hey, we coming for you. Now ultimately you could basically say that Disney, I guess, more or less won, because it's still a mega corporation and it's not owned by or ran by the workers. It's not owned by the workers and whatnot. Um, but I
I
don't know if
only
I had
brought it
I
up
don't know.
just because I only brought it up just because I can appreciate the work that someone has done, but I can still criticize who that person is. I can still be like, they're not a hero. They're not a deity. They're not holier than thou. They
Mhm.
are a flawed human being, and we should still take in consideration their shit.
Yes.
Um, what was I gonna say about Disney? Something recent. Oh, that's why I like cartoons, older cartoons and movies, and maybe even books. I like things to have a disclaimer because
Mm.
I like being able to watch movies and enjoy media. And if it makes you uncomfortable, the shit that they did in the movie,
Hmm.
good. That means that
Hmm.
you're being a better person. You're better than who you were. Because there's a lot of old movies, old cartoons where you're like, fuck, man, really? And
Yeah.
I don't want to get rid of that because I feel like that deifies Disney. I feel like if you get rid
Mm.
of it, you might not, you might, when I tell you that Disney was was racist and did racist
Mhm.
shit, you might be like, prove it. And I'm like, fuck, well,
Right. You
they
know what
delete
is
all their shit. I can't.
exactly, and that's kind of the same way that I feel about it because recently, and this is something that we talked about before we even started the stream, was we've had two recent examples of the same thing happening. One was with Dr. Seuss and six of those books being no longer published. Now that doesn't mean that they'll no longer be available and that the images won't be able to be viewed and whatnot, but you will no longer be able to easily just acquire a copy of those books, right? And it was because of a lot of insensitive images. And one of the images that I brought up that I saw was one that we could see as being a caricature, not even a caricature. It was just it was an image of a nondescript Asian man who was had yellow skin or whatever, and had, I don't know exactly what the outfit is, but like a very typical outfit of the times and whatnot, and holding a bowl with chopsticks. Now that was held up as being one of the examples that was super egregious and super offensive. And it's like, okay, it's like on one hand I can get like the yellow skin part, but I was like but I was like, we've all seen people wear those dresses. We've seen people wear that attire to this day. You know what I'm saying? We've seen it's not like they don't use chopsticks anymore to eat their food. That still continues to be popular to this day. So it's like, like you said, like I much prefer having the disclaimer there, saying that like, hey, there may be some very, narrow-minded or very, stereotypical images and whatnot. Same thing with blackface. No, I don't enjoy it and whatnot, but ultimately, if like I would want to see that and show it to others to be like, oh, blackface is racist. Oh yeah, well show us why. You see this connotation of how it's being used to depict people who are dark skinned is like, being portrayed like this, or even other images that Dr. Seuss had that were really very egregious towards Asian communities, like no questions, ifs, ands, or buts. But like you, I prefer to have it there and to be able to say, hey, give a disclaimer before you may see things that make you feel a certain way, or blah 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 blah. I'm cool with that. And then the other one was Lola Bunny, I guess, from the new
Space Jam.
Space Jam #2 with what's his fucking name, the King, LeBron James, right?
I'm not singing the Space Jam theme song in my head right now. No, it's everybody get up, it's time to slam now.
I mean, it's one of those things. See right there, that nostalgia and shit. It's like it was one of those things that really seep deep. But the change that they made was Lola Bunny. Like the whole Looney Tunes universe is about anthropomorphized animals, right? Animals with human characteristics that they actually don't fucking have, right? And Lola Bunny being like one of the only women characters, because there were other women in there, but there's like an old granny and like, is Tweety Bird a girl?
Tweety Bird has always been like a non-binary.
Androgynous. See, that's what trips me out about the non-binary thing. I was like, wait, didn't we already have a term for that? But I guess always new terms come up to describe different things. Because androgynous to me was like,
and I think androgynous is more accurate.
Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. But
I have no idea. I just know that I don't think we've ever used pronouns with Tweety.
Right. Exactly. Tweety is just Tweety. Tweety's a bird. But Lola Bunny, she is depicted with a very curvaceous figure, right? And, it's been changed to have a much more modest figure. And my take on it was, I was like, I understand the decision, especially because, she's one of the only women characters in there that's even portrayed that way. It'd be one thing if you have a bunch of women who, have a different, different figures and whatnot. But it was like the moment that she stepped into the room, into the scene and everything in the first movie, you had all the dudes doing the typical eyes bulging out of their head, tongues rolling out of their mouth, all that goofy shit. To me, if I could have been the one to make the decision, I would have been like, keep her figure the same, but the men they don't all act like dogs. They're just like, oh, hey, that's Lola. And Lola is Lola. Yeah, she might be a hot bunny, but for this situation, she's just a team player, because it's not as if there's any shortage of women who have the figures, like she has in the first film, and equally as those in the more recent adaptation.
So it's been a while since I've seen the original Space Jam, but I saw a lot of people sharing that meme comparing the Lola Bunny, and I saw a lot of people sharing not an actual still from the original film, but a fan-drawn thing of Lola Bunny.
Yes.
And my thing with Lola Bunny's redesign is, I don't care. Have you watched the new HBO Looney Tunes?
I have. What? No. No, I didn't even.
They are really funny. They're beautiful. They're well done. They did some nods to original Bugs Bunny, where Bugs Bunny now has a yellow gloves, and that was a really old thing that Bugs Bunny did.
Wait, yellow gloves or white gloves?
Yeah, yellow.
Oh shit!
It's a hell of a throwback. And Gossamer, do you know who Gossamer is?
Gossamer,
he's a big hairy red monster.
Oh, that's his name. Okay, I know who you're talking. I know who it is. Yeah.
They put fingernails on Gossamer, and I.
Oh yeah.
It's strange, but I got used to it, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with new designs because they are cartoons,
right?
And the cartoons have evolved throughout time. So I couldn't care less about Lola's figure, about her breast size going down. I'm okay with that. I have no problem with that. Just give me Looney Tunes playing basketball. I'm okay with that.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean that's my, and that's kind of the other thing, right? Is like I said, like, yeah, I would just change the reaction of the male characters within the universe and shit to not make it so blatantly like, oh, we're all ogling at this, super, conventionally attractive woman, as opposed to just being the Lola. But then the other thing is that like, y'all, this is cartoon. We all know Rule 34. There's no shortage of more explicit imagery if you want to seek that shit out. Because in the threads, like on Twitter and everything, I was seeing people sharing those images as well, Rule 34 images. For those who don't know what Rule 34 is basically that for any image or idea that exists, there is a pornographic equivalent of it.
I've often said to people that I will only ever know I've made it big when I see porn of my characters.
Have you seen any porn of your characters
Nope.
yet?
Until that happens, I am small potatoes.
Small potatoes.
Until that happens, when I see porn of my characters, and it's weird because like I feel like some people would be like, oh, that's not why I made the character. Don't make porn of it. But I feel like me, I'd be like, here's my money. I want to buy it. I want to buy that print. I want to own it.
Give me done. Give me the G-rated one and give me the X-rated one. I want one of each.
Do you want me to draw that? I can draw it. Let's. I'm all for. So it's interesting that you said just make the guy's reaction not the usual sexist bullshit, the misogynist thing where it's like, oh, she's hot kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I find that funny because I keep thinking about Suicide Squad movie versus Birds of Prey, because you still had Margot Robbie, but now you have a female director, and you have that scene where she's getting changed when all the villains are putting on their gear and they're getting ready to fight, and all the military people stop to watch Harley Quinn get changed. In Birds of Prey, Harley Quinn has a fight scene in jail, in a white T-shirt with it's all wet and there's just a sprinkler system going on, and they did not sexualize that scene whatsoever. It was just her beating up all of the bad guys in sprinklers going down. And have you seen Birds of Prey?
I haven't seen either. I'm not a big movie person.
Cool. I don't necessarily recommend Suicide Squad. I enjoy it, but it's like I enjoy Mario Brothers. It's not a good movie, but it's gonna. I get it. I kick it.
It hits a certain spot, but it's not exactly high. Not high art.
But Birds of Prey, that's a weird fucking movie where what I like about movies is show me something I've never seen before. That's all I want. And they have this really cool fight scene in a sprinkler system where the slow motion is not overly done. It's done really well. And a lot of times the water adds an element to the slow motion that's just fantastic. And I feel like seeing the contrast between having a male director versus a female director direct the same character, the same person, the same actress is astounding. And I agree with you that if they kept Lola Bunny's figure, which I'm okay with, again, I don't care if they keep it. I don't care if they change it, because it's evolution. Cartoons do it, whatever.
Right.
But I do think that it would have been cool. And they're still probably not going to have the guys have the whole droop, the jaw hitting the ground, the big bug eye kind of thing. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's all you have to do. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, simple as that. It's just having different sensitivities to the shit. It's like, would you, if you seen a woman, or just whatever you're attracted to, if you seen somebody that was just especially appealing to your aesthetics and everything, would you just go in their face and just drool and just ogle at them, stare? Quite a few motherfuckers will do that, but it's like most people, if you ask them directly, they'll say like, no, of course I wouldn't do that, because they know that it would be received, in a very negative way, because it is a very obscene fucking, behavior. It's like, fucking control yourself. It's like, there's nothing saying that you can't go. Like, that's the funny thing, right? Is that like, you have people like the Quartering and these other right-wing reactionaries that are like, oh, you're taking away, you're destroying my cartoon, you're destroying this, is cancel culture run amok and everything. And it's like, well, no, it's not as if liberal, left-wing, progressive people don't, saying care about sex or it's not as if we don't care. We don't have an appreciation for these lower basic, impulses and shit. But it's just how much. It's like a correction to how they've been overemphasized and been focused on, glorified way too much. Because like you said, changing the figures and everything, it's like, okay, whatever. But then these motherfuckers make it seem as if like, you're destroying my childhood and everything. It's like, why was your childhood bent on? It's like even disregarding the specifics of like these characters. Why is your identity in your childhood based so much on these entertainment figures, on this entertainment, on these commodities. You know what I'm saying? Shit that could have gone, you could have been raised around anything else.
And if you are really into fine arts, if I redraw Mona Lisa, am I ruining your childhood?
Are
The
you
Mona
outliving?
Lisa still exists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's because usually that stuff ends up being more representative of their inhibition towards change in general.
Yeah.
Same thing with like because there's another like a cartoon I never really watched too much, but it was based around like the characters being like jewels or being like in jewels. Like there was some little boy or whatever, and you go to this
Yeah, yeah,
universe and
yeah. Steven
um
Universe, right?
oh, is that what it's called?
Is that
I
what
never
you
watched the shit, but
I
I think
didn't
that's
watch
what
it
it is.
either. I watched like
Like
one episode and I was like, cool.
right, not for me, but it's not for me though. But from my understanding is that a lot of that cartoon, a lot of what it is, it's based around people having different gender and sexual orientations, um, and playing around with that dynamic. Which even though it's not something that really speaks to me, it's really fucking popular because it does speak to a lot of people's experiences or what they're interested in, or just giving something people something different to look at. You know what I'm saying? Um, and then these same people will come up and be like, oh, why are they trying to force this shit on us? This stuff isn't even popular. It's saying it's not even good business. It's like, no, it's been very good business. It's been very popular. It's been very much accepted. It's just that it's representing something different than what you want there to be. And you can't take it. You can't accept the fact that you're not being the only catered demographic or the largest one, or realizing that, that maybe that if you have to really compete for representation of your shit, that you actually don't represent as much of the population as you thought you did, and a lot of motherfuckers can't handle that.
That is tragic because
Yeah.
I'm all for seeing new content, seeing something that I've never seen before. Like I said with the Birds of Prey, um, if I don't like it, I don't like it. That's fine. I don't need to like everything. Steven Universe, I can appreciate it for what it's worth. What's weird is that a lot of times when I tell people I don't like it, they're like, "Huh, you seem like you really like a LGBT. You like representation. You like you like cartoons. Why don't you like that one?" I'm like, it's not political for me. It's just I will support the cartoon. I will do whatever I can to support the cartoon. I'm all for the cartoon.
Right.
I don't want to watch
Right.
it.
See, that's where the gatekeeping comes into play from the left wing side and everything, because they're like, oh, you don't support this. It'd be like if like what's something black that's become
Oh,
revived.
I'll give you an example of something black. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah,
When Black Panther came out, I was like, yeah, no, Black Panther's fucking awesome. I had a lot of fun watching that movie. They gave me something I've never seen before. That's
yeah.
a fucking awesome. Wakanda. All the designs of the buildings in Wakanda are gorgeous.
Hmm.
Everything about that movie is just beautiful. I love that movie.
Yeah.
But then one of my friends on social media, they're like, oh, we got to support Wrinkle of Time as much, and I'm like, do
Why?
we?
Do we really?
Because I saw the trailer. I don't want to watch that movie.
Same here. I'm like, I don't give a fuck if it's Oprah. I like Oprah in other ways and whatnot, but
Sure.
that doesn't mean I want to go fucking see her, say in this shit.
Did you
And
watch that movie?
hell no, nah, because
I did when it was available on Netflix because I'm not
yeah.
gonna I don't want to go out of my way and watch it, and I watched it because it was conveniently available for me, and I watched it and I was like, that's fucking weird. I don't want to watch that ever again.
Yeah. No, just like, same thing, like, seeing like I said, I'm just not a big movie person. Part of the reason I went to go see that Black Panther and a bunch of other movies at that time, I was dating a woman who, she works at Sony and whatnot. And
Oh,
so she got into, she loves movies. And so, excuse me, when we would hang out, oftentimes we would go out and see a movie, whatever. And Black Panther was just one of them. Otherwise, the only other time I've seen movies in the last several years has been during secret shopping or mystery shopping. Um, and I've seen quite a few, good movies in that respect. But yeah, but like you said, that stuff like, oh, you got to go support Wrinkle in Time, saying too. Even though I don't have people in my circle like that, I've definitely seen it in the discourse, in the conversation, or even people saying that like if you didn't like Black Panther or if you didn't go to see it, then you're being anti-black. You know what I'm saying? And again, just like that example earlier of people harassing a woman at the shit, it's like, y'all, it's like let people who want to support this shit support it, and people can have differences of opinion and everything. Make don't make every don't make your identity centered around this fictional shit. Don't make your identity fixed around commodities and around celebrities and around entertainment and stuff. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't belong to you. Literally, the intellectual property doesn't belong to you. Anything can be done with it by whoever owns it and shit. And anything can happen that disrupts or goes against what your expectations were. So then what? Are you going to have a fucking meltdown? Are you going to have an identity crisis and shit? It's like, or are you just going to accept the fact that, oh, that this is art, and that while it may be catering to a certain demographic or communicating a certain message, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to speak to me, or even that the art is even that good. Because I immediately had my criticisms of Black Panther about the storyline and about the implications of the the different implications of the story and everything. Mainly about
it's still Marvel. Marvel's still gonna formulate or Marvel films are formulaic as fuck.
Right. They're formulaic, and they still have to speak to very big, ideas. What's the term that they use? There's another term that they use to talk about stuff that speaks to like the general human experiences. I forget exactly. Fuck it, whatever. Maybe it'll come back to me later. But in any case,
that's a bad sign that I don't care about that. Like if I don't know the word, I'm like, no, I don't care.
Oh, high concept.
Okay.
High concept, which is ironic because it really what it means is that lowest common denominator, what caters to the most amount of people and whatnot. And the thing is about Black Panther is that it's still very much about very typical gender, saying norms and whatnot. It's literally a kingdom, saying, which means that there are people who aren't kings, they're serfs, they're peasants, they're toiling, saying in society and everything. It's like, if you have all this technology and this wealth, I understand hiding it from everybody else, but why can't all the citizens enjoy the same level of privileges and shit, or at least be closer to one another? So that was, another thing. But it's like, of course, like this, you get caught in the story, you get caught in the dynamics of, oh, this person is blatantly good, this person is blatantly evil, and high concept shit like that. Very basic shit that can be absorbed all over the place. Because it was the biggest movie in the fucking world. It was the first movie shown in Saudi Arabia. You know what I'm saying? It was
Black Panther.
Black Panther was the first film that was shown in Saudi Arabia, and it was a fucking smash. And and it was even a smash in China and many other places. That people thought that it wouldn't be big at. So it's also like, hey, we don't even always need everybody here to be behind the shit. There's support for it around the fucking world. And that's also what we want. We want blackness or whatever, Marcus, we want different shit to be demystified and for people to be able to see themselves in it. That doesn't mean people are going to go around dressing in blackface, but if motherfuckers, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Swedish, I don't care if you're Aborigines, I don't care if you're fucking Indian or Brazilian or Chilean. If you want to go around dressed like T'Challa or whatever, because that's you fucks with them and you like what they represent, please do that shit. If you want to dress up like one of the fucking warrior women and everything, yeah, hell yeah, do that shit. Represent. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't trip over that stuff. The only thing I really trip over when it comes to that is like when you paint yourself to look like a different, a different demographic and everything. And even then, it's really about what is the message of it, because you could be doing blackface to mock, like in Tropic Thunder. You know what I'm saying? You could be doing it as a way of
that shit was layered as fuck.
It was layered as fuck. And for people who never saw Tropic Thunder, I would just encourage you to go see it again. But basically, the joke is there is a actor who is doing a very what's that kind of acting when you get really deep into the shit? Method acting that is essentially blackface, but in doing that, he's actually mocking the fact that he's doing blackface. But at the same time, it's Robert Downey Jr., who's a great fucking actor. So even when he's playing black, you're like, oh, that's actually a black guy. So it's like, so if you didn't know who he was, if this is your first time seeing the shit, you'd be like, whoa, this black dude just ripped off his fucking face towards the end of the movie and has white makeup on. It's like, no, it's the opposite.
My favorite part is when he's talking to the farmers and he has to put on makeup on his black face and he's speaking a different language, but still has the same kind of
applications.
Yeah, he's still playing the black guy doing a different language, and I'm like, oh my god,
yeah,
that movie is straight satire.
It was oh my god, Yeah.
If you're offended by anything in that movie, it's because that's the point.
Right. It's right. Exactly. If you're offended, it's because you don't understand good fucking. It's because you don't. It's Poe's law. You didn't get the satire.
Yeah.
You didn't get what was really supposed to be mocked at. You just took it like, oh, this actor in the film is doing blackface and everything. It's like, no, that's just the surface level. Like there's there's quite a bit more going on here, and again, like Robert Downey Jr. To me, is one of the best fucking actors, if for nothing else, that role alone. Because there's very few people I can think of any background who could pull off some shit like that.
That was what I remember. Prior to that movie, I was not the biggest fan of Ben Stiller. And then he went and made that movie, and I'm like, well, shit, I was wrong.
I had enjoyed Ben Stiller. I just didn't know he could go that deep, so to speak, with the layering of the comedy and whatnot. Because of course you had the other, his other stuff was more, about very slapstick humor or gross out humor, and it was rewarding in its own way, but it was kind of in one ear and out the other. But Tropic Thunder is something that like continues to be brought up, what I'm saying, for examples of discussing these very issues, for good reason. It's a classic, and it did something that a lot of films, a lot of art didn't do before and hasn't been able to accomplish since.
And not accomplished so thoroughly and so well done, so fine-tuned.
So fine-tuned. Oh yeah.
Even Tom Cruise as Les Roseman,
yeah.
I'm just like, oh my god.
Because Tom Cruise, for all the weird shit and everything, it's like, for the most part, he's always come off as very weird with the Scientology and everything, but he's always come off as a pretty decent guy. Otherwise, like he's always seems to come off as like an okay person, and he's always obviously a great actor. Saying that's why we all revere him and everything, for nothing else. But yeah. And it always annoys me when people say shit like, "Oh, Tropic Thunder couldn't be made again." Blah blah blah. It's like, first of all, it doesn't need to be made again. Some ground doesn't need to be tread over again. It's like, hey, they did that shit and they made very strong points and whatnot. So your objective shouldn't be to just repeat the shit. It should be to try to make a different fucking point. Give just as rich an experience for people that leads to a different conclusion and whatnot. It's like, why do we need some people?
Blazing Saddles is good. Blazing Saddles, a lot of people will say that can't be made again. And I'm like, good.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I don't want
to. We're past that shit. We're past that shit. And one of the things that they'll bring up is the fact that they bring up one of the big major scenes, in which the word nigger is being used, right? And they'll be like, what? First of all, if you just want to hear the word, if you just want to hear that shit, just listen to Tarantino.
Yeah.
What I'm saying? Which I go back and forth with how comfortable I am with hearing him say that shit. But it's like, first of all, you don't need to go very far just to hear that word, but also the whole point, again, in the film, it's Poe's law again. Motherfucker's not realizing that he's making fun of people who think like that. He's making fun of people who just look at black people, and that's the first term that comes to their head. Because that black guy was one of the only redeeming characters, the only one with half a fucking brain throughout the whole story. You know what I'm saying? So like, and it's just like, people grasp onto the parts that they want to. It's like they don't care about the part that certain characters and demographics are being elevated and everything. They just care about I want the slurs, I want the bad words, I want the, I want the derogatory shit and everything. And it's like look, there's never going to be any shortage of that shit, but it's like, can you at least not update it and finesse it? There were still, I don't know if you know Cumtown, the podcast Cumtown.
Nope.
But basically,
I'll make a recommendation.
Yeah, it's not a mainstream podcast, but it's fairly popular in certain demographics and whatnot, because partly of what they do is that they still kind of hold on to the edginess. Now it's a lot more rich and they go a lot deeper into it and beyond just using slurs, but slurs do come up, but it's usually facilitating a deeper bit or more story. And it doesn't, sometimes it's going to rub you the wrong way and whatnot. Sometimes the bits don't always pay off, but it's like, at least he's trying to finesse there. At least it's three guys. At least they're trying to finesse it and update it and make it something that's not so archaic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, it's like you can still do this stuff. Just don't expect it to be represented in the mainstream. But these motherfuckers still make $250,000 a year, doing this podcast. That you can't even say in you know what I'm saying, in mainstream outlets or whatnot. You can't even repeat the name Come Town. You know what I'm saying? But they're making more money. They get more streams and more downloads and shit than a lot of these mainstream figures. So there's no shortage of an audience of people who want to you know what I'm saying, enjoy that shit. It's just updated. And a lot of motherfuckers, they're just very resistant to, no, I just want to hold on to the way we used to do shit. And it's just like, okay, well, just die off then. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
Adapt with the times. I've had to change my...
If you don't adapt, if you don't evolve, you're gonna die out.
Right. It's like we've all had to do that. I've had to change the way I talk. I've had to change the, you know, shit. But ultimately, it's better because it's really just making me. It's not just saying, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like, if you're gonna do it, step your game up. And nobody should be offended. And really, nobody should be offended by that. Step your game up. It's like, okay, I'll step my shit up.
I remember I was talking to some conservative online. I forget where we were. I think it was either Twitter or Instagram, but we were commenting and we were having an argument. And he was like, "Oh man, illegal immigrants are stealing the jobs." And I was like, "Nope, that's impossible. No one stole your job. What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, every time I apply for a job, it says, am I bilingual?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "That they want people who speak Spanish." I was like, "Then learn Spanish. Get smarter." I don't know what to tell you.
Step your game up. Make yourself more competitive. You know what I'm saying? It's so funny too, because these are the same people that will say that they don't want handouts and they don't, you know, you know what I'm saying, giving people more benefits and shit. That's socialism and everything. But what you're basically asking for is them to lower the bar of expectations and give you a participation trophy, you know what I'm saying? For just coming at, I just want to come as I am and everything. I don't want to have to compete with these people who are bringing other skills and other perspectives that have their own languages. Right, they know 5 languages and bring their own value. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to fucking accept that. Like, I only speak English. I wish I would have taken my lessons in Spanish and Portuguese more seriously. And there's still time to do that. But it's like, I also understand that, like, when I see these opportunities, like you said, come through where it's like, oh, we need somebody who's fluent in these other languages and shit. It's like shit. It's like, hey, I got outcompeted. I got outbidded.
That's on
me.
So
that's on, at a certain point, it's like, hey, it's on me. And I can change this shit. You know what I'm saying? When I feel like I really want to. I just happen to be very spoiled by the fact that I belong to a global superpower who's been able to inflict their will and their language and shit, you know what I'm saying, around the globe.
I've been in some Zoom meetings with folks in Europe, and they're all speaking English, and I'm like, yep.
Got it. Still got it.
Like there was someone in France, Germany, Holland, and they're all speaking English. I'm like, must be nice.
and really, we shouldn't even say that it's us, because, like, yeah, we have American English, but it's the Yankee English, but it's like England, that little fucking island, that little fucking island in the middle, you know what I'm saying, in the North Atlantic or whatever. Somehow they conquered the fucking world. It was super improbable, but hey, they fucking did it, and now we speak the language that they wanted us to speak.
So I want to mention this. We were talking about racism and we were talking about representation. One thing that I always think about when I'm writing a comic or doing like a cartoon is how invasive systemic racism is. Because, like, I'll make a comic and I will think of a comic about some kind of old term, and I'll have to Google that term because odds are, if it's old enough, it's probably fucking racist.
Right. Like there was, like, damn, I'm trying to think of one, but it's like, there's so many now that I know that are racist that I don't want to repeat. But it's like, yeah, like you said, like, you hear these certain phrases and shit, like one that used to be, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was going to bring up, like, I wanted, because my name's Jimmy, and I want to make a cartoon about Jimmy Crack Corn, and I looked it up, and I'm like, nope, I'm good.
Nope, can't do that. Or like a different one from another angle is the cracker, you know what I'm saying, as an insult towards white people, but really it's referencing the fact that, like, no, there used to be, you know, saying the field hands who would crack the whip on slaves to make you work harder. That's not an insult, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's not a fucking insult, but people, you know, use it because they don't understand the connotation, you know what I'm saying, that it came from, and don't realize that they're reinforcing, you know. Same thing with, like, well, this is kind of a different thing, but it's like the insults of mayo. It's like, first of all, mayo's fucking delicious. It keeps you from choking on a goddamn sandwich. You know what I'm saying? I
don't know what you're saying.
I I see. This is so funny. 'Cause so for some people, this is gonna really fuck them up. It's like a black man
It's fucked me up already.
that loves mayo, and a white guy that's kind of like, keep that shit, say it away from me. But
I, I do eat mayo on burgers when it's made prior to my knowledge. When if it's already made, if it's already there, let's do this. But if someone says, "Do you want mayo?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm all right."
yeah, I love mayo. I love all the different varieties of flavors. I love mayo. But in any case, like mayo gets used as an insult, and it's like being white is not an insult, and it, or at least it shouldn't be. But again, people start essentializing off of identities and everything, and just want to have something to use. Now, this is getting away from what you were saying before, in that using old terms of using old terms. You know,
I think it's still sticking because you're still going with now we're talking about stereotypes with food and how we will still use that as it's silly to think of insults that aren't really insults, but you're going to take it anyway. Like,
right. Oh, there was one that was used when the English were starting to colonize India and South Asia and whatnot. They were referred to those peoples as curry eaters. And and obviously we had that context of like it being used as an insult. But if somebody would come up to me saying you're a curry, it'd be like, you're goddamn right, I eat curry. It's
I would be like, yep.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Like, you're not down with the curry? What the hell's wrong with you?
So they during the summer when they were saying shop when the whole thing was really advertising shop black, like find a black business to shop at.
Buy yourself a black.
What was that?
I said buy yourself a black.
Yeah, buy yourself a black. Yeah, because that can't be used against me. No. But I looked on a list of black-owned businesses, and I found that there was a local pie shop that was just down the street from me, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Because I love pie. It's just she's such a small business that she doesn't do a lot of advertising, so there's no way I would have heard about her. But every time I go to that place, now she treats me like family, and I love her. And she's like, well, what kind of pie would you like? And I was like, whatever's available, because all of them are delicious. And the only reason why I bring that up is because one of them is a curry pot pie, and it's fucking amazing.
Really? Wait, when you say pie, you mean like you're not meaning like dessert pies. You mean like
I'm talking about both.
Oh,
because they got savory pies and sweet pies, and they have the meat pies. And then they have the desserts, and then the meat pies are delicious. And I've never had a curry pot pie.
I never even heard of that. But now that, like you said, are they still? Does she still operate? Does they still?
Yep.
I need to. Yeah, you need to definitely shoot me the details on that, because
I will send you her information, because she's just amazing, and the pies are delicious. And she doesn't like when she'll often argue with me on tip, because during the pandemic, I want to tip people as much as they possibly can, because they are endangering their lives to feed me. And I'm like, no, here's some money. I want you to stay in business. I need you to stay in business, because these pies are amazing. And I am so grateful for that list of black-owned businesses, because I would otherwise not know about her, because she doesn't advertise.
that shit is that shit is great. And I love that. That is definitely one element of that shit that I definitely get behind and love that stuff. It's like, yeah, go out and support, other shit. And then at the same time, I'm like, I also, and I think I mentioned this before, is that like, in addition to people talking more about the black experience and different elements of black businesses and everything, I'm like, it also would behoove us to point that attention, towards like the Latin communities, the different parts of the Asian communities, the LGBT, communities, bringing awareness that like, oh, you can support somebody, because a lot of people kind of get at a loss of like, okay, what do we do? Where do we go? Like, there's 1,000 different options. And I would like to not spend my money at a corporation, but it's oftentimes the most easily accessible and recognizable one. For those reasons of like saturating their presence in the media and advertising and buying up space, blah, 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 blah. So I love that shit. And then even places like Target have gotten better about like, because I do my job and everything, I do merchandising and stuff. And it's like, I've definitely noticed a change over the years of them like profiling different like women-owned businesses or black-owned businesses, or,
At Target?
At Target. Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
They've definitely done that. I mean, I think I've seen it more so in like, I think I've seen it more so represented in like health and beauty, makeup and clothing, fashion and stuff. But it's like, hey, that's nothing to sneeze at. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's still people's businesses, that's still people's livelihood, and that's still representation and whatnot. They had a large media campaign that was about a woman. She was a black woman, and it was her company, and she made women's hygienic products and whatnot, right? And just from that one advertisement, there was a huge backlash from conservatives, especially white people, who were saying that like they were, the same old thing of like, oh, you're trying to erase, saying white, business, you're overly focused. This is racist because you're focusing on one group of one. You're focusing on this group of people based on their identity. Isn't that racist? Gotcha, liberals. That's always their fucking thing, right? Like, oh, we hate identity politics, but it's like your whole fucking frame, your whole argument, your whole reason that you're bitching is based on identity politics in the first place. It's just not the identity politics that you want to see represented. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Target has definitely, done a job with that. But like, yeah, that those are important, making those lists and, what I'm saying, in addition to word of mouth and shit like that. And yeah, and just putting and just sometimes making that effort. Like I got frustrated, like going back to the Sony thing, the film thing is I've longed because I've been following music for so much longer. I already understand that the music, that the mainstream is only going to ever represent a certain faction, factions that are really popping and profitable at the time. But if you want to find really differences of opinion and shit that might be more satisfying to you and speak more to what you really are, you're going to have to go out and do some homework. You're going to have to go and look for it. You're going to have to spend some time asking questions, looking into stuff. You're going to listen through shit that and be like, damn, I can't believe I spent $10 on that, but at least you figured it out and you learned. A lot of people don't want to do that. They don't want to put in any work. And one of the frustrations I found out when I was, dating that same woman who works at Sony, is she will constantly complain about the output from the mainstream and everything. But then I'd be like, okay, so what about what independent films have you looked up on like Netflix or Hulu or whatever, or what college, colleges, saying they'll show their films and everything. You can go and check this shit out. Or there's like a small theater, independent theater that you can go and watch it. And they're like, and she's like, I don't want to go do this stuff. It's like, okay, so you just want to be spoon fed something. So you're only going to go there if it is represented in the most mainstream, spaces, something that represents what you want and everything. But it's like you can't fucking rely on that. But a lot of people they do. A lot of people they just rely on that shit. They don't want to do any homework or push themselves or have a buyer's guilt.
Have you seen? Okay, I'm gonna start this off as a question. What movie do you remember where they had a female narrator? That was not a character.
I mean, I'm somebody that hasn't seen a lot of movies in general, but even from what I can recall, but even from what I can recall, there's nothing that immediately comes to mind either.
The reason why I bring that up is because there's a movie that has a lot of big names in it, but most people don't even know it exists because it was relatively an indie kind of project. And it's on HBO Max right now. It's called Inherent Vice.
Okay.
Have you heard about that? It's a noir film starring Joaquin Phoenix and Josh Brolin. So pretty heavy hitters in Hollywood right now.
Yeah.
And it's all about a pothead detective, and it's a noir film, and it's pretty damn good. I thoroughly enjoy it. Well, I love noir films, so I'm going to like it. It's I always feel bad when studios know what I like and they're like, here you go, buy a ticket, and I'm like, all right.
God damn it! I'm like, damn it, you got me again.
But I think you're right. I think that so I know there are a lot of people who don't want to look, who don't want to do the homework to find something independent, something that is not one of the mainstream kind of things. But I also feel that people are tired. I always say that people are overworked, that they need to pay their bills, and so they work all the time. So a lot of people don't have the time to look for it. And so I find that one thing that I love about journalism is that I know a lot of people who do the research, and they will provide lists of stuff that people can support, local businesses that people can support. On the same list of black-owned businesses, they're like, oh, frequent these beauty supply stores, and I'm like, no, because I don't buy beauty supply. I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go there. But if someone makes me a list of like locally owned businesses that make food, I love
Yeah.
food. I'll
Yeah.
eat food. Let's
Yeah.
do that. Let's if you give me a link of all the places, I'm like, I'll go down that list. I will once a week
Hmm.
or once a month. I'll just check off that list because I like food. I know I'm going to eat tomorrow.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like doing this whole thing with, staying on with food and whatnot. I've, I'm somebody that already likes to cook most of my meals. And if I do go out, I tend to go to a smaller, place. Yeah, I'll hit the fast food and everything. But like as far as going to dine or taking out and whatnot, I usually hit a local smaller place. And so, excuse me. And so, that's something I definitely try to, focus on. Even when I don't necessarily want the food, I'm like, you know what? I still want to throw them something and still show them that it's worth keeping their doors open. You know what I'm saying? Because there are many doors that have been shuttered and won't come back open again. You know what I'm saying? And I want to at least show them that it's like, no, it's worth it. That you still have people who really want this shit and are willing to pay for it. So you don't have a problem with it.
And I think the business is called Home Pie Bakery. In case anyone wants to look it up, because I don't even know if you can Google her. I don't even think anything shows up. I did see an Instagram post about them, so there is something. But for the most part, I feel like her businesses, because like she's located in an area in Ontario where it's mostly just a bunch of businesses around her. So I think
Mm,
that she just enjoys the lunchtime rush because I think she only is
mm,
open like for a few hours.
yeah,
But if you get the time and she's open, I highly recommend it because it has not to be not to have so much not to over exaggerate it,
yeah.
but she has changed my life. Knowing that
Yeah.
there's a pie place just down the street.
No, I mean, dude, that's the beauty of it because it's like, yeah, you could get your pies relatively, anywhere. You could just go and get all the Marie calendars or whatever the fuck from your local supermarket and shit. But knowing that, like, oh, there's a local place I can get locally, some made shit, ready made, made to order type shit. I can support a small local business and whatnot. And that is beautiful and that is life changing and shit. You know what I'm saying? I think it's life changing that I have saying certain restaurants that I can, pop in and I can order the same fucking thing again and again and again. Um, because that's a fixture of your life. Food and like food is a very important fixture in everybody's life, And I guess I'm kind of going back on what I said earlier on that I'm not a foodie. I'm just not as maybe a crazed a foodie as many other people. I prefer to eat my food than take pictures of it.
Yeah, I don't. The only reason, like, I know a lot of people take photos of food just because everyone likes photos of food,
Hmm.
but all the times that I posted photos of her food that she makes is just because I want more people to know that it exists.
Yeah. No, that's
um,
that's beautiful, and it sounds like she could use some help well, if she wants to in advertising, search optimization and whatnot.
I'll think because like I know she said that when she renovates the place, she's like I want a mural. She's like, do you know how to paint? I was like, I don't know how to paint. But I know artists I can hook you up with, or I can draw the thing in a miniature way, and then we can get it up there in decal way. That's perfectly possible.
Yes.
I will not charge her. I know it sounds bad to do free stuff, but I'm just like small businesses, local businesses. I'm like,
Mhm.
if you give me food, I'm willing to work to make art for you. I
Yeah.
like trading with small businesses.
Yeah, I mean, hell, that's there's nothing wrong with that. There's
Well,
nothing
if
wrong
people
with
are
that.
listening, I don't want them to think that they can just make me food. I just want.
Right. It's like this is like a one-time freebie for this, particular individual. If she wants a second mural or she wants like something in the driveway or whatever, it's like, hey, we might have to start talking about some rates.
Yeah.
It's like, but no, yeah, it's like I'm gonna give you the same thing with like the earlier thing. You're like, oh, here's a free shirt, here's a free T-shirt, here's a free CD, here's a free, saying whatever, just something to keep your attention and stick in your mind past that initial point of engagement. You're a little blurry right now.
I am? That's weird.
Yeah,
Did you get in focus or
Cle-
anything?
yeah, it's clear again.
Okay, cool. My camera's been weird like that. My camera doesn't want like it's like sit still.
You said it's a webcam, or you're using like a DSLR or an actual camera?
No, it's a webcam. It's
Okay.
a what Logitech thing because I
Mhm.
googled what webcams you recommend and people said good things about this one and I was like, all right, do
Mhm.
it. Well, I don't know when the pandemic's going to end, so let's do it. Um,
Yeah, right. Yeah, again, that's
Uh,
that's why I felt it was pertinent to like get the new gear that I got, like the new camera and everything, because I'm just like, I don't know how long this shit's gonna last, but it's like, obviously, if I have to create stuff digitally, then it's like, hey, then that's what it is.
I I feel like when because I follow a lot of people on Instagram that are all for representation and all for shopping small, and so
Hmm.
whenever someone makes me a list, because I am tired, I'm exhausted. I work at the warehouse and I'm a creative, and so whenever someone can make it convenient for me, like here's a list of books you should read, here's a list of restaurants you should frequent, here's a list of websites that are gonna here's a list of musicians that you should listen to, and even checking out their YouTube will give them some money. I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Hmm.
I'm all for that. The more that you can make it convenient for me, because
Hmm.
I'm eager to find new creatives to support.
Yes.
I just share it on your Instagram story, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook. Just give me a link and I'll be there. I just need
Yeah.
the link.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and that's something that I think that and I definitely feel kind of called out in that respect. Not that you're calling me out, but I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, you know what? I've because you follow my stuff. I've very much when I'm not posting about like current events and shit like that, I very much. Oh, you went blurry again. Um,
Oh, great.
but when I'm not, but when I'm not posting about like something else that's going on, some derivative content, then I'm usually just posting my own shit. And it's like, yeah, that's great on me to like be promoting and pushing my stuff. But I also realize that I'm like, damn, I'm not pushing a lot of other people, you know what I'm saying, who I also would want to be, discovered. And part of that I will say is a frustration. Like, you've been good about getting back to me and having that contact and keeping up with one another. But a lot of other people, especially those that are creative, it's been really frustrating. They don't want you to be, it's not enough to just be friends and be friendly with them. They want you to also be fans of their art, or they don't really want to fuck with you. It's like you need to be a fan and a friend, a fan and a friend. And it's like, first of all, there's plenty of dilemmas that come with that, with trying to keep that dynamic and whatnot. But then even beyond that, it's like, why can't we just do why is it that I can't just be like, hey, I don't really necessarily maybe fuck with your art necessarily, but I will promote it, and you can also promote my stuff, because there may be somebody in your feed that does really enjoy this stuff and will become a new fan in the same way that I've, saying, discovered other stuff, saying, through you and everything. Saying, like, a lot of my friends, I'm not necessarily big fans. I don't necessarily consume their art per se, but I do, like, I want to do interviews with them, talk about them. I want people to know who they are and everything, because you never know who's going to get roped into your shit, you know? Do
I
you
mean,
have you? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say I've got friends, even folks I interviewed for my podcast. Where Question Crunch, by the way,
Hmm.
um,
Question Crunch. That's right. Yeah.
I know people who make jewelry. I don't buy jewelry, but I know people who do. So why not share my friend? Or just I'm not gonna buy anything because who would I buy it for? I don't have anyone to buy it for. They're like, oh, well, buy it for your mom. It's like, yeah, but I don't think she's gonna like Mickey Mouse jewelry. She's not that big of a fan
Yeah,
of
right.
Mickey Mouse, but
You're not looking for that Mickey Mouse drip. Yeah.
but I do know a lot of Disney nerds who will like your stuff. So let me just get your name out there because there's customers out there, even if I'm not one.
Exactly. And then I guess like one more thing is, have you felt, so it's like, even though I do music and I'm making a podcast and I do like the photo art type shit, I've also had this, like earlier with the whole pandemic thing, in that just as I have not wanted to create, I haven't had the same, passion to create, mainly for music. I haven't had the same passion to create music and whatnot during this shit. I've also noticed that, and even years prior too, that I also was not discovering music at the same rate, stuff that I really cared about and was passionate about, and that I felt um, was something that was actually new. Now, part of that is, getting more busy with other. Part of it is that busy factor of just getting caught up with other shit. But then also, um, like, I'll listen to like Fantano, right, or other music reviewers, and sometimes I will listen to the actual music, But so oftentimes, like I'll just listen to them talk about it, whatnot, and whether they give glowing reviews or negative reviews, I'm kind of like, okay, that's cool to get what kind of the vibe was about, and then I just kind of move on without even looking towards it. Have you felt any sort of fatigue in how you're discovering, or at least how you're consuming, or how passionate you are about searching out new stuff and finding new shit that keeps your interest?
I don't know. I honestly don't know how to answer that question just because okay. I know a lot of people who delete Facebook or delete
Mm,
Instagram because they say that, oh, it's too dramatic, it's too toxic, I don't want to be a part of this, it's just too negative.
mm,
I've curated my Facebook and Instagram and social media in a way that most of the people I follow will supply new people for me, or like they will introduce me to new people.
mhm,
So, or they'll introduce me to outlets that I did not know that could introduce me to new people, where it's you just have to know how to work social media. For example, um, like I'll see an artist for the mascot march that I'm working on right now on Instagram. That's an artist. The artist made the art challenge, and
mhm,
she is an independent artist. I would give you the Instagram handle, but I can't remember. Kimberland Art. Amazing artist. I love her work.
mhm,
Um, and I want to do the art challenge because I like supporting anyone's artistic endeavor.
mm,
And a lot of times, if I use the right hashtags, like I used Lucky Charms today, and the Lucky Charms Twitter liked my liked my tweet, and it got
mm,
more recognition, more people that saw it. And I feel like it doesn't feel fatigued because with the art challenges, I don't necessarily have to finish them. It's just
mm,
the idea that I put any amount of effort in it whatsoever, and I feel a lot of times, um, what can be tiresome, what can be exhaustion, is the expectations or the intimidation
mm,
that comes with either being a good fan or finishing an art challenge, where it's just like, if you're not getting paid, you don't have to finish. It's a project, it's an activity. You volunteered for it. Don't worry if you can't finish it. It's fine. It's
right.
not it's supposed to be fun. Looking for art should be fun.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Ultimately, we are all like anybody who considers themselves an artist, or if you just indulge in art, it's because you enjoy it. It brings a certain amount of happiness in everything, and it's very easy to get cross that line. Um, Usually, as a creator, when other priorities become more important, like increasing the fan base or making sure people approve of this, or how much making sure I'm getting a proper rate for what I'm doing and whatnot. And those things are important and everything. But it's like ultimately, you never want to lose that pleasure that you get from it. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, it literally just becomes like any other job, you know? And
I
so, yeah, no, go ahead.
I've told people with the mascot march, because I keep bringing it up because it's really on my mind right now.
Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that.
I I look for what inspires me,
Mm-hmm.
because when I looked up Snap Crackle and Pop for Rice
Mm-hmm.
Krispies, I didn't really I could easily draw their current look or the '90s look that I'm more familiar with, but that's boring. I don't find any inspiration behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So I will either look up original designs, or I'll look up old commercials, because you never know what's going to inspire you to make the art.
Yes.
And it's been a lot of fun. Like I looked up Sugar Smacks, and I did not,
Mm.
because like they did Dig 'em the Frog for Sugar Smacks, or Smacks. I think it's just called Smacks, or Honey Smack. I don't know. I don't eat a lot of cereal. I don't eat that cereal. It's too expensive. I go with the store brand.
Right.
Anyway, um, I looked up Dig 'em, and I looked up Smacks, and I found out that their mascot used to be a clown. And I'm like, I'm fucking happy that they took that they stopped that. Good. I'm glad that they stuck with a frog. A frog
Why
is
is that?
fine.
Why is that? Is it because of the whole fear of clowns?
Yeah, I'm afraid of clowns. And I saw a commercial for Smacks, which is the really old black and white Superman cartoon. Not Superman cartoon,
Mm.
Superman show. The
Okay.
live action black and white Superman show. And they have like the scene where Chief is talking to Clark, and he's like, "Where's Jimmy with our breakfast?" And Clark's like, Clark is like, "Well, Chief, Jimmy found a new cartoon called Sugar Smacks," and Chief's like, "Yeah, I've heard of it, and that's why I'm hungry for it." And then Jimmy comes in with Sugar Smacks, and then they end it with a fucking clown coming out of the box. I'm like, nope. You had me at Superman. You lost me at a clown.
Dude, I'm so amazed because I've never liked clowns, but I was also never afraid of them. I just always kind of found them to be annoying more than anything else. I'm like, why is this motherfucker trying so hard to amuse me? You're not amusing. But I've always, but it's always made me laugh when I've seen like the fear that is associated with clowns and whatnot. And then you know, seeing that like that was the whole thing about it. Because like obviously it, like that fucking creature, he's hideous as fuck, ugly. But I didn't I had no idea that it was still playing off of that long-standing fear of clowns. You know, this figure that's always trying to gain trust from you, and then thinking about the ways, obviously, you know, people's minds go into dark places of thinking about how that can be abused.
I think that I actually think so. This is a thought that just came up my head.
Mm.
And I'll show you how the thought came in my head. But
Yeah,
first, I
please.
want to say that I think it's our love of journalism or our early years of journalism that gave us a hunger to do the homework and know
Mm.
that research is such an important part of life, or it could be, and it helps with life in every aspect.
Yes. Agreed.
And the reason why I bring that up is because I do a clown charity. If you look at my drawing, that's the clown charity I do,
Mm.
and I have people donate money, and I watch clown stuff because people are very altruistic when they can also be sadistic.
Yes.
And so and I realize that it's a funny phobia, that it's not something that really hurts me, so why not? It's not.
Hmm.
I'm not. I'm not like traumatized by it. I'm just like, I don't want to watch that clown, but let's do
Right.
this.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was looking up clown clips, and I remember hearing that Michael Douglas did a film, an old film, where it was being told what to do by a mannequin clown. And I was
Hmm.
like, what the hell is the name of that movie? And so I looked up Michael Douglas and clown. And you know what came to my attention?
Hmm.
It's a movie called Animal World. Have
Animal
you
World.
heard of this?
No, hell no.
Apparently, it's a recent film. I think it's a foreign film where a motherfucker is a clown like samurai, or I don't know what
A
he
clown
is, but
samurai.
he has a sword on his back, and it looks like the level of choreographed fighting and computer animation of the fucking Matrix. It looks like it could be a legitimately good movie, but there's a clown, and the guy like turns into a clown, and the fight scenes that I saw in the trailer actually look pretty cool if he wasn't a clown.
I fucks with that. I fucks with that. Shit, that's making me really want to go check it out now.
It's on Netflix.
It's on that. Jesus Christ, everything's on Netflix, HBO Max, or whatever.
Well,
I'm
a lot
I'm
of
still a big,
times
yeah.
I feel like Netflix has a lot of films a lot of foreign films,
Mm-hmm.
and I really appreciate it because I feel like one, Netflix can afford it. That's the because like
Right.
they can't afford a lot of films, they can't afford the big studios, so they go foreign.
Mm-hmm.
But I also really appreciate that because that means I'm going to be exposed to markets that I would otherwise not know.
Mm-hmm. And that's also the benefit of, you know, because a lot, again, you know, people want to criticize and think about like capitalism and industry and everything, and it's like, look, yeah, there are a lot of problems with capitalism, but one of the great things about it is, yeah, one of the, because the main gripes, you know, saying that we have to really boil it down is the distribution, right? The distribution of the profits and the resources and everything does not get distributed fairly under capitalism. But one thing that capitalism does do good is it's really fucking efficient and it's really productive. It produces a lot of whatever it is. It finds the best way of producing whatever the hell it's trying to do. And Netflix is an example of that in that they created so much profits and created such a glut on their platform that they can throw however millions of dollars at foreign films when you would struggle to be able to find a place that could host, you know what I'm saying, a fraction of those films and even hope to break even and shit, right? You know, and that's you know, just what I think about it. It's like it's at certain points it's like I'm not mad at the industry. I'm not mad at when certain corporations, certain companies become really big because it's like you can still do really good and interesting things within that realm. There's some shit that you can't do or whatever because you're legally obligated to hit certain profit margins or whatever. But it's like, hey, that has a certain function in society, and also shows the fact that art, in all these different ways can be profitable. You know what I'm saying? And so to me, I'm always, it's like, I go back and forth, saying with those things of seeing when they make decisions we don't like, but then they also do things that show that, like, oh, art is still a important part of human culture, society, and the economy, and that you can have a sustainable career if you know how to do your shit right and cater to a big enough audience.
Well, when I remember the whole joke not too long ago was that Netflix will greenlight anything, and I'm like, yes, I'm all for greenlighting anything. Just
Yeah,
make it, like make it happen.
yeah, exactly. You don't like the shit there, then hey, you propose or you push something that is of the quality that you want. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is, so many people have done that, which is why you can go on Netflix and literally just stroll for hours without even watching a film, just seeing all the different options that are there. You know what I'm saying? Like on one hand, you shake your head, but it's like if you just want to decide to go down a rabbit hole, you can definitely do that. You know what I'm saying? In the short time that I was really getting into movies and everything, when I was really on my Netflix and everything, that was a big part of it. Seeing all these independent films or watching some foreign films or just being able to go back and watch certain films that I hadn't seen in a long time. And that's a very valuable resource.
There's a movie. I'm trying to remember what the name of the movie is. It's something like No Country or whatever, but it's an Idris Elba film, and it's all about the African warlords or the people that kidnap kids and give them a gun and force them to be a soldier. And it's a very beautiful and touching film, and Netflix did it. Netflix made it, and when I saw it, I was like, I want this to be a part of historical curriculum in schools because I feel like when I was at school, I learned about World War II and the Holocaust a million times over, which I get it. It's a very important thing to learn about, but as I'm Jewish, and it's very depressing to hear about the Holocaust for a whole goddamn week.
Right? Let's hear about some other genocides. There's been no shortage. There's no shortage of other genocides. You got different African ones. You got the Turkish ones. You have, or I guess I should say, the Armenian ones by suffering under the Turks and whatnot. You have, there's so many, and that's something that gets brought up. That's something that gets brought up a lot within certain parts of the Black community, especially the ones that tend to be very that entertain conspiracy theories pertaining to Jewish people, unfortunately. Sure. But it's like they bring up the valid criticism, which is like, why do we learn about this thing so much? But then like the African, Middle Passage and that thing, which killed far more Black people, doesn't get brought up as much. And, unfortunately, a lot of people make the very lazy, short-sighted assumption that it's like, oh, Jews control and everything is, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, look, while Jewish people have been able to get a foot in different industries, including the media and entertainment, it was a hard-fought struggle. People just don't know about that. You know what I'm saying? People don't know about that, and they don't understand the fact that, like, that the representation of Jewish people, like in finance and banking and whatnot, comes from the times of medieval Europe when they were denied the ability to pursue other careers and whatnot. And then, funny enough, as economics became a bigger deal and finance and internationalism became a bigger deal and whatnot, they were already in a position to make those power plays, which is why we have those associations and whatnot. But going back to the whole genocide thing, it's like, they've been able to use their place that they've carved out for themselves in order to say, hey, you're never going to fucking forget about what happened to us and the reason why we go so hard about this shit. At the same time, a lot of people also don't understand the ways in which Jewish people have stuck out their necks for other groups, because there are plenty of Jewish people who empathize with the suffering of others and try to teach game to say, hey, here's how you can beat these motherfuckers at their own shit. You know what I'm saying? Because Jewish people are still a minority in this, I think, like less than 10% of this country and everything. Yet, the stereotypes abound, their presence in different, places in society abound.
Our space lasers.
Space lasers and shit, abound. But to me, I'm like, I want to take game from that. I want to learn some game from that. You know what I'm saying? Like for real, like one of the most popular activists of the 20th century, Saul Alinsky, you know what I'm saying? He was foundational to a lot of the tactics of that time in working with Black people, working class Black people, to say, hey, here's how we can really make your presence known and show these, white people you got to respect, they got to respect you. Saul Alinsky. in certain left wing circles, they try to shit on him and everything, for different goofy ass reasons, because it's like, oh, he's not a Maoist, or he's not a communist, he's not an anarchist, those fucking goofballs and shit. They live in fantasy land, because 90% of them wouldn't even survive in a system, saying that's carved out in the way that they imagine. But in any case, it's like yeah, it's and now we're having these discussions. There were plenty of black people who did not know until these last few years about the Tulsa race riots, about Black Wall Street and everything, right? Like, I remember hearing about that shit as a kid, and I was like, this wasn't even taught in Black History Month, even when I had black teachers.
I did not know about.
There's
I
a, there's
absolutely
a,
didn't know about. And I watched. I did learn from it from Watchmen, and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And the thing is, I didn't see it from Watchmen, but of course I heard, seeing the breakdowns and people talking, and I'm like, I love this. I love the fact that this is finally being brought to a mainstream thing, something everybody can take in at the same time. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, and the thing is that, like, I would say, like, don't feel bad about this shit, because we're all learning stuff. It's really about how open is a person to challenging their perceptions of how they saw things. Some people are very ignorant and just like, go do your research, and you can't speak on this, blah blah blah. To me, I'm all about the more that we demystify this shit, and the more that we bring more people into understanding the specifics of these different groups, the more that we come to an understanding that, like, oh, all human beings, that this isn't oppression Olympics. Everybody has suffered in different ways from different people, and also inflicted shit amongst one another through gatekeeping and other things. The more that we come to recognize the fact that we all do the same shit, just in different forms, I think the more that we can finally reach that threshold where we say, okay, let's leave some more of that dumb shit behind. You know what I'm saying? Just like as nations started to industrialize and modernize and everything, you realize that, oh, you can't just go in with your armies everywhere. You have to be a little more diplomatic and use like your spy agencies and intelligence and all that other shit, right? But that is a lot less messier than everybody just getting a band of people, what I'm saying, and saying, all right, let's go and take their shit, or try to take their shit, and just throwing bodies into this, this thing. It's like, let's when are we going to reach this threshold where we can stop mystifying things and saying that all this stuff is off limits to other people unless they represent that particular group? Because I'm ready to get past that shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm ready to get to the point where we can all collectively start saying, hey, the corporations are the problem, big part of the problem. The governments are a big part of the problem. The fucking cultishness surrounding law enforcement and everything is the problem. You know what I'm saying? But we still got so many people who are running off in different directions and playing in these fucking, I'm saying, fantasy scenarios, and LARPing as communist or anarchist or whatever the fuck. And it's just like, what are y'all doing?
I think it's going to be a while, but I do think that we are getting better, because at least now people are getting a voice and they're getting representation, and they're getting a platform to be there. And so right now, I feel like a lot of people are just understanding now, hey, now I can actually say it, so now I'm going to shout it.
Yes.
And I feel like we will. I'm patient. Like I mentioned that a lot of people have short-term memories, and
yes,
that's nothing negative. It's not that negative.
Yeah.
It's a little negative, but not that.
Yeah. It is what it is. It's human.
But I am super patient. I'm in it for the long game, and I feel like eventually, when the dust clears, people are going to start realizing, like, and I've learned from I've learned from the Flat Earth movie on Netflix that the only way people are going to know any better is you have to help them along. You have to guide them to an understanding, because otherwise they're not going to learn. And a lot of times I've told people that, for example, I've always known that this was a plot point, but I never really embraced it much as I do now, because I watched the Alien series, and that series is so anti-capitalism.
The Alien series?
The Alien series. Have you seen this series?
I'm sure I've seen at least like the first couple of films, but like the whole, like, yeah, go ahead.
The first one is all about the working class, because all it is people who are transporting shit, and then they get a signal, a distress signal, and they what they find out is that the corporation actually wanted them to go down and get the organism that they found and bring it back to Earth, and everyone is expendable on a ship just because the corporation wants the alien. The second one, they send in the military to go get the alien, and they say, oh, don't worry, Ripley, we don't want the alien, we want to destroy the alien. Sure enough, the big corporation doesn't give a fuck. They all the military is expendable. They just want the alien. The
Jesus
third one,
Christ.
they go into the prison. They crash land in the prison, and all the prisoners are expendable because they just want Ripley because she's got the alien. Then in the fourth one, it's not so much about the big company, it's about the militarized industrial complex now wanting the
Mm.
alien for themselves. So in the second one, the military was not the antagonist, but in the fourth one, it becomes the antagonist.
That's so fascinating. That's interesting because because I'm definitely somebody whom by the time the third series in a film in anything comes out, the third series in anything comes out, I'm kind of like, I'm kind of checked out. But
A
I
lot of
do
people didn't
enjoy.
like the third one.
Yeah. I mean, that happens unfortunately because sometimes like the third, thing will be shit or the second thing will be shit, but then the ones that follow after that will be better. But it's like a lot of people like me, they're not, we're not good fans and everything. We're shitty fans because at the moment you disappoint us, we're like, oh, moving on. Um, but
But
that, but that,
I feel like the first two are pretty phenomenal. It's the third one that loses their formula.
yeah. But I'm really questioning because the thing is, I do still remember the first one pretty well. That was super iconic. But you relating the story back, I'm kind of like, if all of the people were expendable and they know that this is a dangerous organism, why did they expect them to come back in the first place?
Because they had a droid. They had a robot that didn't, and
That wasn't
the robot
susceptible.
the robot was what Ian shit I forget the actor's name, but the robot was not going to get attacked by the alien, and all the
Mm.
robot had to do was take one of the eggs or take a sample of the alien and bring it back home. Uh,
Ah,
all
okay.
all the people were mostly expendable, and if they die, they die.
That's a very unfortunate. And you know what's interesting in that is I see a parallel is that one series I did keep up with, funny enough, is shit. What's the Purge?
The what?
Purge.
Purge. Okay.
Because and then, like I said, it's rare that I keep up with a series of films and shit, right? Purge, saying was obviously about, this thing about like, oh, we have one day where people let out their violent fantasies, and really what you come to discover, spoiler alert, the series is already like 10 years old and shit, but spoiler alert, is that it's really about um it's really about killing off the most disenfranchised, the poor who have the least ability to protect themselves, um, which I guess somehow makes which helps um, cut down on the burdens of like welfare and having to take care of these people and everything. It's just a ploy by the rich and the government and all that shit, right? And corporations and shit, right? And throughout the series, the first one was, it's kind of um, over the top and everything, but that's kind of the point, right? And plus, it's a film. The second one, it was okay, and then the third one, I actually did not watch. I'm telling on myself, the third one I did not watch, but that one was actually focused on the experience of like small business owners and small regular people and shit and how they the anxiety that they have and like how much like what they have to do to be able to survive and everything. Now the fourth one, the final one, is actually a prequel. So it's actually the very first purge that happened because every other purge film, the purge is already a staple in society. It's already accepted as a matter of fact. The last film, the fourth one, was the very first Purge. And to me, it is the best one. And it's actually one of the best films that I've ever seen because it shows the confluence of all of those different factors. Like you see how people at the lower end of the spectrum are handling it. You see how people in the middle of the shit are handling it. You see how government officials and people in intelligence agencies. And one of the main plot points is that you see that the purge was kind of done. However misguided it is that it was done with some good instincts. It was kind of done in good faith of like, oh, this will help people get rid of those tendencies, those violent urges and shit. And so we won't have as much crime and stuff throughout the year, right? You come to realize that, surprise, surprise, there were some motherfuckers who had those original bad faith intents on it of just cutting down on the poor, just saying fuck the poor or whatever. And that one of the people, a woman character, the leaders, is that she's like, yo, this is fucked up. This isn't what this thing was supposed to be about. And she ends up getting taken out and everything. And this is something that we see play out. Like the CIA, they've been not shy. They've never been shy about what the fuck they do. Um, this is exactly what corporations and intelligence agencies and governments have been doing for decades. You know what I'm saying? And The Purge was just really kind of a movie series that kind of wrapped up you know what I'm saying, how all of these different influences play off of one another, and the different points of view that people have. And honestly, it's been one of the, even though it gets shit on a lot, to me, it's been one of the most rewarding movie series and best like movies I've ever seen.
Um, I just feel like I feel like corporations, because we were talking about how once people realize that corporations are the bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
um, I feel like realizing that is inevitable if we can
Mm-hmm.
get people to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Because what was it Teddy Roosevelt had, the bust something busters. Hold on, it was trust busters where
Trustbusters. Yeah.
he would knock out corporations.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Some balls. He was a brave motherfucker.
Side note, I only know that because Hysteria made a parody of Ghostbusters with Trustbusters, but that's it's a cartoon.
Oh, interesting. But that's so fucking. But that's so fucking awesome, though. That's so fucking awesome. Like
And
that. That's. Yeah. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say that because a lot of corporations will make the villain a corporation or a businessman to make it look like they are the good guy. Because why would they make the businessman the bad guy if they are the businessman?
Right. Nice
Because I was
deflection.
watching
Mm-hmm.
Pete's Dragon and Tall Tale on Disney Plus, and both movies have the businessman being evil, where they want to strip resources, they want to mainstream the whole thing, and get rid of the people that work the area. Or in Pete's Dragon, it's kill the dragon and use all the parts of the dragon. In Tall Tale, they want to build a train going through the farmland and buy out all the farmland and destroy the wilderness just for
Mm.
business. And those are pretty. When I was watching it, I was like, huh, Disney, you know they sound like you, right? Like,
Right. Like you're playing a little too on the nose, right? It's like y'all know we see you, right? It's like y'all
because
know
like
we see you.
on Tall Tale, the bad guy's like, you can stop me, but more will come behind me.
Exactly. That kind of reminds me of Martin Shkreli, the dude, the motherfucker about the Wu Tang album, and he was in charge of that company when they raised the pharmaceutical costs and everything. But honestly, and it's like when they interviewed him, even though he didn't do the best job of representing himself, one thing he did say that struck a chord with me, and still speaks to those instincts of these organizations is he's like, if I wasn't gonna do it, they would have just kicked me out and then brought in somebody else that was gonna do it, because that's literally the function of these entities. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, yeah, and then Disney is one thing. Remind me, I'm sure you probably know the numbers, but like, what is the number of the market share of entertainment that
Oh,
Disney has?
I'm not gonna remember
Because it's
that.
I think it's like over 3/4 or like at least 2/3. But it's like it's it's monstrous. It's monstrous. And I've just happened to come up in a time when I'm already an adult and I've already been separated so much from the Disney-based shit that I'm like, it still astonishes me when I still see people of all age groups that still go crazy for Disney. I'm just like, what the? I'm like, what? I'm like, and I'm not even hating on it. I'm like, what the fuck are they doing that's so special though? I'm like, is it that? I'm like, is it really that good? I'm like, are they really that good?
I think that I actually can't I can't explain that, because I feel like what I love about it is that um people have been able to create their own, not identities, their own narratives to the story.
Mhm.
Because one thing that happened over the summer is that I got exposed to some really diverse Disney organization or Disney fan groups, and it's just really cool to see people take ownership and create their own world based on in the Disney universe, where they can criticize Disney and get on Disney's case, and Disney will change because the consumers want this thing.
Mm.
And even though Disney has a lot of ways to go to get better, they still have taken baby steps towards it.
Right.
And you can appreciate that, even with their disgusting past,
Yeah.
and keep holding the fire to the feet, or What's
Feet to the
Total
fire.
Match? What was
Yeah.
it?
Feet to the fire. But either way,
Okay.
it works. Hold the fire to the feet. Same thing.
Keep doing it. Keep
Yeah.
on keep pushing
Pushing them.
Disney to get better is what I'm saying. And I love it. And I honestly I don't know about everyone else, but I think that music is is the key to their magic because if we can feel a ton of shit with music. I mean, I still say that the movie Hook, I love the movie, but I think that if it wasn't for John Williams, that movie would really suck because it's a weird fucking movie. And every time I watch a scene without John Williams music, I'm like, that's bizarre. That's
Yeah.
what?
Because Glenn, remind me, because I think I just heard this a few weeks ago and it didn't click for me. But wasn't Glenn Close one of the pirates?
Yes. And and once they said it, I
Can't unsee it.
because like she plays a pirate and the pirate has a beard. But now that I see Glenn Close, I'm like, that's a
You're
fake
like
fucking
that's
beard.
you're like she's wearing a beard.
And the moment Hook walks up to Glenn Close, he's like, "Tell me the truth. You told them." And she's like, "No." And I'm like, "That's fucking Glenn Close."
Like that's a girl. Who let a
But
girl in the pirate shit? This ain't Mulan.
but I feel like Disney knew that if they get a song and they make it repetitious or they make it magical, they make it something that people can sing and give it a beat, and suddenly people will sing it and be involved, and now they're part of it, and that's how people create a relationship with the company.
Yeah, yeah, that's I mean that's a very good point. You know, that tie between music and animation has always been a big thing because, like you said, the animation by itself will only get you so far. There's only so many people that would just appreciate that. And then as far as music, um, people's passions around this. I feel that we've also kind of reached a threshold where, like, you know how there's been like a golden era of stand-up and comedy in general in the last decade. I don't know if you really keep up with it, but there has been considered like a golden age of up until the pandemic of comedy and shit like that, right? And a lot of people made the observation that, like, yeah, while music is still popular, still a multi-billion-dollar industry, it doesn't hold the same grip on people's psyches and the cultural lessons that we learn from it. But something that has continued to grow and whatnot outside of like comedy and shit is um, like animations and films and whatnot, but the combination of the sights and the sounds and whatnot. Hell, you see, actually, I was gonna say, video games is another one. You know, the battle to get video games to be accepted as a form of art has largely been won. In addition to it being, economically viable and also being very culturally influential. You know what I'm saying? You probably see just as many people who want to dress up as their favorite video game character or villain and everything as you do of like a comic book person or from a movie series, a film series.
The girl I mentioned earlier, that was a Star Wars character from a video game that I had no fucking clue who it was.
Right, right, exactly. And it's just beautiful about what things people attach themselves as what people continue to find themselves represented in different things and attached to different shit and stuff still continues to inspire them. I was never going to be singing let it go, but I didn't shit on all these little kids, all these little girls who had something that they could see themselves in and had a shared song that they see somebody dressed, seem similar or whatever. They start singing and all of a sudden it's a chorus of everybody and shit. And it's just like, it's like, holy shit, what the hell's going on? But it's like, that's beautiful. That's another manifestation of shared culture and people, saying feeling confident and being able to express themselves, whether they just by themselves or they in the company of literally thousands of other, people in unison. I respect that shit.
And I feel like as long as we don't gatekeep, we can show people the classics of other Disney cartoons. I will continue to try to show people a Tall Tale because I want people to see, the business guy's the bad guy.
Mm-hmm. The business, yeah. Business
Disney
capitalism bad.
Come on.
You hear somebody talking about spreadsheets and quotas and saying pluses and minuses and shit. Bad.
If you see Nestle on something, don't buy it.
Mm-hmm. But Nestle's the only one in town. But Nestle's the only one in town. Well, shit. I mean, I guess you can say.
Yeah, I've recently bought food where I'll buy it and I'll get home and I'll see the logo. I'm like, damn it!
Like, god damn it! I failed.
I'll still eat it because it's there.
Of course. It's like that's the fucked up thing, right? It's because they consolidate all the good shit. It's like it's not just corporations just delivering bullshit. It's like, God damn it, y'all have the only good shit in town too. Y'all because
Yeah.
y'all bought it because y'all consolidated all the good shit, you fuckers. You know? But and we can keep chatting after this if you still have time. But we already gone for like 2.5 hours and
Yeah,
whatnot.
I'm looking at the time. I'm like, no, I got work I gotta do.
Yeah, that's all good. That's all good. So, did you have any final thoughts that you wanted to give just about, just your perspective on where things are going in general, whether in the specific industry or just in the nation and the culture, and what kind of things that you anticipate, what I'm saying, going forward? Or what would you hope to happen?
I want, because well, first of all, like shit, like enjoy shit. There's a lot of stuff on there. There's a lot of stuff on Netflix and Hulu and all the streaming services. And a lot of times you will find ones that you already recognize and you'll latch onto them because that's something that you've already been sold on and you know that it's good. And in such a very unstable and unpredictable time, it's comforting to watch something that we know. But there could be some hidden gems out there that you don't know are gonna have just as much an effect as the classics. Um, be open to it. Try it out. If you don't like it, cool. no one's no one's making. You're not obligated to watch the whole thing. You can watch it, be like, oh, I'm done, and then stop it. It's fine. No one's gonna make you watch it.
Mm.
Um, I I always want more representation because I feel like you're going to get some really beautiful stories out of cultures and groups of people and locations that I would otherwise never know about. And that's what I love about reading. When I see an author that has not had the same life experiences that I have, let me see it. Let me hear the story because that's something I'm not going to know. I would never, I would not otherwise know it. And it's going to hit me hard. And I say a lot of negative stuff about Disney in this episode.
Hmm.
But one thing that I really love is when watching Coco. And Coco has a lot of
Mm.
controversy behind it. Lots of
Yeah.
controversy. Disney takes baby steps forward, but there's still a lot of steps back.
Yeah.
Coco has a lot of controversy to it. But that song "Remember Me,"
Mm.
everyone has had a grandparent that has died, and it's just beautiful. It's a human thing that Disney found a way to pull that heartstring and let us know that we're all human. We all have common feelings, shared experiences. Um, One thing I really want to see in the future is I feel like I feel like white people have been able to get a lot of really fun, stupid stories out there. Whenever I think of really like retro sci-fi stories where you have the big bulbous helmet and just really stupid outfits. And I
Hmm.
feel like white people can just do that, and people are like, "All right, cool, is white hero? Let's put him on." And I'm just
Hmm.
like, I want to see more heroes in that kind of stupid genre. I want I want silly sci-fi. I don't
Hmm.
want every I don't want equal representation to always have to be like this big monumentous thing. I wanted to have just really stupid stories that are just
Yeah.
sitcoms, just silly shit.
Hmm. Yeah, having the full, it's really about having the full spectrum, right? Of having stuff when it can be very serious and very focused on certain, same, ideas or whatever. And then other stuff that's just like, yeah, whatever. We kind of have everybody in here just being complete goofballs because people of all backgrounds are also, there's plenty of goofballs in every other group as well, you know?
I want to see a Flash Gordon that's not necessarily a Flash Gordon. I don't want I don't care about that character. I don't care about that character story. But I like the idea of not the usual white guy from the Midwest and he's like the
Hmm.
quarterback type character. I want some silly sci-fi like that. Like
Mm.
no big franchise, but you know they will. I just
Right,
want
right. If they can milk enough dollars out of it, if the numbers are looking right, if the numbers
yeah.
are looking right.
Have you watched before we leave though, have
Mhm.
you watched do you watch the TV show Fargo at all?
No, I have not, but I do know that they turned it into a series. I've seen the film.
Yeah. The most recent season, because every season is a different story. The
Mhm.
most recent season had Chris Rock as a
Oh,
mobster head.
okay, okay. How do you
And
do?
he did great. I want to see him do more serious roles. Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
He was a legitimately scary mobster.
Yeah. That's the kind of the thing real quick, is that like with Chris Rock, obviously he's a legendary comic and whatnot. I Even though I love his presence and I love some of the stuff that he's come up with and delivered, I've never been a big fan of his comedy, so to speak. And I've always kind of thought, along with Kevin Hart, that I would like to see them in more serious roles. Because one of the things that not even turned me around, but kind of showed that Kevin Hart really does have talent and does have a much more dynamic range that he lets on, was when he did that film with Josh Gad or whatever, where he had a service where he would pretend to be your best friend. And there were some moments of comedy and levity in it, but it was more so like there were parts where I was being like almost moved to tears and shit, because it's like you're seeing this dynamic of both of these grown ass men who are struggling with a very real issue that's pertinent to today, of being able to have long-standing friendships, real friendships and shit, and especially as men, because it's more typical for dudes to have more difficulty in doing that, especially into adulthood. And so I was like, fuck. I was really rooting for it, and I just haven't really kept up with I haven't really kept up with either, again, because I'm not a really film person. But it was just like, oh fuck, like I didn't know that was possible. But I was just like, oh wow, seeing these guys being able to do this much more complicated film, more complicated roles and everything. I was like, yeah, I would definitely love to see it.
So I recommend it just because I like, again, that's a role that would in previous years probably be given to a white guy. So it's just really refreshing. Where I'm like, good, give everyone, make any role, if their skin color is not important to the role, then it can be
Right.
anyone.
Exactly. If it's not specific to a particular demographic or person of in history and shit, whatever. Make it whatever.
And I know Fargo says it's based on real events, but
Yeah, right. It's the Coen
I,
brothers.
I
Oh, it's
I have
not the
such a
Coen
hard
brothers.
time. I have a hard time reading that in the title. I'm like, dude, you just had a ghost in the episode.
Yeah.
It's
They're
not
also
based in.
they're also tongue in cheek, right? Like they'll do that shit. They'll have you like some aliens or some, doing double dutch or whatever in the neighborhood and be like, this is based on true events. And it's like, okay, all right, we got you.
All
We got
right.
you. We get it. Thanks for the laughs. But yeah, but hey, go ahead and plug your socials and whatnot, and we can get out of
Uh,
here.
you can find me everywhere. Jimmy Purcell, Purcell. It's Pur. Like, if you're telling me I stink, Pur. Or like, Been Better Comic, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. My podcast is Question Crunch, where I just interview people for an hour long. Definitely not what we're at. Almost
246, yeah.
almost 3 hours.
Almost 3 hours, yeah.
Where I just talk with people about different projects that they're working on, and life, I guess, and weird questions. My favorite are the weird questions, where I'll ask them, like, if you had to wear a bowl of cereal on your head, what cereal would it be? That sort of thing. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I feel like you and I don't get to talk that often, but it's been a blast, and I feel like we could have gone for hours.
Yeah. I know. I mean, we definitely could. We definitely could. We definitely both have, that in us. But yeah, it's great, and it's great to have somebody, because the thing is, we only got to chill a couple of times before this pandemic and shit hit. But I think it's a real testament to, again, like, when you make the effort and uncover those overlapping interests and bonds and whatnot, that like you can share, I'm saying, meaningful relationship with somebody, even when you can't be near them and whatnot. So it's like, thanks for being on. I appreciate you having me on the first time, and we'll continue to do this in the future. And yeah, we'll continue to plug each other's shit and link up another time. All right. All right. Well, thanks for having me. This is Sam Boy. It's All Relative Podcast, and we'll talk to y'all later. Going to stop the recording.